rare earth mining and the processing in other places, that we do it according to the highest possible environmental standards. However, this has then the downside of increasing the prices or the costs. So that's an environmental premium that we should be paying for having a responsible rare earth element supply chain.
Another obvious path to getting hold of rare earths is, instead of mining them, to reuse those that have already been dug out of the ground.
Another aspect that also contributes actually to reducing environmental pressures is looking at recycling of rare earth elements. That hasn't been done in the past. It hasn't been commercially viable. We have not had the technologies, and in a lot of electronic equipment where rare earths have been used, it hasn't been viable to look at extraction. So we've had very low, in some cases even 0% of recycling. That's now changing. We see companies now setting up new facilities.
Rare earth elements are now being recycled in France, Germany, the UK, Canada and the United States. This targets permanent magnets found in electric vehicles, wind turbines and electronic devices.
These are really good developments because we're accumulating a huge stock of magnets in various electronic devices, hard drives, for example. So when these reach the end of life, there can be recovery of the secondary materials.
This is all progress when it comes to the West reducing dependence on China, but none of it can happen overnight.
The big question is how fast or to what degree is it possible to reduce the overall dependency on China. So I think it will take years or decades even to shift the dial. So this is beginning to happen, but we won't see a major shift anytime soon.
Now we return to our question. Can the rest of the world catch up with China in the race for rare earths? Fast-developing modern technology for green energy, defence and electronics is dependent on access to critical minerals, a subgroup of which, rare earths, are environmentally damaging and costly to mine. China gained a head start, ramping up a decade ago a government-backed push towards the manufacture of green technology and the mining and processing of the minerals needed for supply chains. Meanwhile, countries in the West relied initially on market forces and are now scrambling to secure their own supply. This will need broad international cooperation and vast investment. But on a positive note, latecomers to the rare earth race may find some advantages: better environmental standards, access to better technology, and, of course, lower prices. You've been listening to The Inquiry. This edition was presented by me, Tanya Beckett. The producer was Matt Tolson. The researcher was Evie Yabsley. The editor, Tom Bigwood. And the technical producer, Richard Hannaford.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio.
Good morning, Manitoba. You are listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, everywhere on the CBC Listen app and streaming on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Gonna talk about the weather here. We have a yellow level cold warning for parts of the north. This includes Lynn Lake, Thompson. Wind chill values could make it feel like minus 45, minus 50 out there right now in Winnipeg. It is cloudy, minus 12 on our way to a high of minus 9. Chance of some light snow mixed with freezing drizzle. We're going to have more on the forecast coming up. Now, on this hour of the show, we'll hear about a newly expanded all-Canadian bus manufacturing facility that is now up and running right here in Winnipeg. But first, let's listen in on what's happening in the news with our local headlines. Here is Heather Wells. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, a 67-year-old Lockport woman was killed in a tourist bus crash Sunday in the Dominican Republic. Family members confirming Colleen Fullerton had just arrived in the Dominican with her husband for a 2-week vacation. WestJet says Sunwing customers were on their way to their hotels from the airport when the bus crashed. Brittany Fullerton says her grandfather was also hurt and remains in hospital. So we'll hear more on that. As well, school buses and school lunches in Brandon. Some parents say the system isn't fair? We'll hear from them in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells there with your CBC local news headlines. Well, looking at some precipitation later in the day today, high of -9 tonight, dropping down to a low of -13. Chance of some light snow. Again, it is quiet in the city right now as a lot of people are just waking up, but if you have something out there that you want to tell us that's maybe affecting your commute, don't forget to call our commuter line, which is at 204-788-3093. Sarah Sanders standing by to take your calls. Also coming up on the show, we will talk about what international law says about the attacks on Iran. A university professor from Western University will join us coming up on this hour of the show. You're listening to Information Radio. Stay with us. World Report is coming up next.
I'm Garvey Bailey, in for Tom Power. As a teenager, the rapper Mercules almost lost his life in a violent attack. Now he's making history as the first Canadian rapper signed to the iconic Death Row Records. He'll talk about his new album, Survivor's Guilt, and what it took to get here.
I know you think I'm bad, no, but to be honest with you, I do.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Air raid sirens ring out again across Jerusalem as the war in Iran enters its 5th day. Israel says it has launched a new broad wave of strikes against security headquarters in Tehran. Israeli Defense Forces say their attacks on the Iranian regime's infrastructure will intensify, neutralizing Tehran's ability to retaliate. The CBC's David Common joins us from Tel Aviv. David, what more can you tell us about developments between Israel and Iran?
Well, Martina, there has certainly been no slowdown in the pace of either the attacks on Iran or Iran's response. Israeli forces have talked often about striking leadership facilities, which may speak to their attempts to kill the most senior officials in Iran's regime and its military force, including, frankly, those who might become the next supreme leader. The U.S., meanwhile, speaks a lot more about targeting things that can shoot. In other words, missile launchers and drones. U.S. Central Command says it's hit 2,000 targets in the first 100 hours of the conflict. Now, when I speak about Iranian missiles and drones, they have continued to target Israel. Sirens have wailed in this country through much of the overnight hours. Israel now saying one of its F-35 fighter jets destroyed an Iranian fighter in flight. That would actually mark the first time an F-35 has shot down anything anywhere during combat operations. Now, we talk about the tactics and the geopolitics of all of this, but people are at the heart. Civilians have died in Iran and Israel and beyond, and it appears that will continue.
Attacks intensifying as well between Israel and Hezbollah. What's the latest on that front?
This fight does not involve the Americans or the Iranians, not directly anyway. Hezbollah, a proxy force of Iran, and it has been firing rockets at northern Israel. Some get intercepted, some have landed. People have been hurt in Israel. Israel is not only using airstrikes in response against Hezbollah, they have moved ground forces into Lebanon. Tens of thousands of Lebanese people are therefore on the move to escape the escalating violence. This is certainly destabilizing to Lebanon, which has always been precarious. There is a ceasefire, or was a ceasefire, agreed to a year and a half ago between Israel and Hezbollah. That's over. And so there's the question about how and when the fight in Lebanon ends, just as there is with Iran. What the desired end state is and how many people will die before we reach that point, those are the big questions overarching all of this.
The CBC's David Common in Tel Aviv. Thank you, David.
Quite welcome.
Ambulances in Sri Lanka are rushing dozens of Iranian sailors to hospital following a suspected submarine attack in the Indian Ocean. More than 100 people are missing after an Iranian frigate was hit roughly 75 kilometers off the coast of Galle in the southern part of the country. Sri Lankan Navy units have pulled 32 survivors from the water, but dozens more remain unaccounted for. This deep-sea strike would mark a huge expansion of the conflict, thousands of kilometers from the front lines. The White House continues to struggle with its messaging surrounding the war in Iran. Senior officials and even U.S. President Donald Trump are providing conflicting reasons for the scale of the attacks. Those mixed messages will be front and center today as the Senate prepares to vote on a bipartisan resolution that would limit the president's military powers. The CBC's Willie Lowry joins me now from our Washington bureau. Willie, what more can you tell us about today's Senate vote?
So this legislation was drafted well before U.S. President Donald Trump launched Operation Epic Fury, but it's gained added importance as the U.S. is now in the midst of a quickly growing conflict in the Middle East. The War Powers Act is designed to allow lawmakers to demand congressional approval before any further military action takes place. If passed, it gives the president 60 days to call for the withdrawal of U.S. forces from harm's way and another 30 days to carry out that withdrawal. But today's vote is unlikely to pass. Republicans hold a 6-seat majority in the Senate and appear to remain, for the most part, behind the president. But there has been frustration from both sides about the administration's seemingly mixed messaging on why they needed to launch the attack when they did. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says he's unhappy with the reasons for instigating this conflict.
Wars without a clear objective do not stay small. They get bigger, they get bloodier, they get longer, they get more expensive. This is not a defensive war. This is not a necessary war. This is a war of choice.
The House is supposed to vote on a similar resolution tomorrow. It, too, is unlikely to pass.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is going to speak in about an hour. What are we expecting then?
This will be the second time Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and General Dan Kane, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, speak to reporters. They'll likely give an operational update. President Trump has said that the U.S. is ahead of schedule in Iran and has intimated that the fighting will intensify in the coming days.
Thank you, Willie.
My pleasure.
That is the CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. Prime Minister Mark Carney is drawing back the curtain on his relationship with U.S. President Donald Trump, offering a frank assessment of what it's like doing business with the volatile world leader. Carney made his comments during a fireside chat at a think tank in Australia. It comes as the Prime Minister attempts to forge new middle power alliances while navigating trade tensions and a growing conflict in the Middle East. The CBC's JP Tasker has more from Sydney.
He is more interested in your viewpoint on various things in private, and that creates an ability to work through things. But, it's not easy, to be clear. It's not easy.
At a think tank event in Sydney while on his Indo-Pacific tour, Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke frankly about the challenges of working with U.S. President Donald Trump. Asked how he's managed to maintain positive relations with his American counterpart, Carney says it's about respect.
Respect. But not obsequiousness. He's president for a reason. He's had success in other areas. He's elected twice. You would say elected 3 times.
Conceding he must be careful what he says to avoid any blowback.
You don't want to say anything in public that you can't back up. One chooses language for the audience, right? I mean, that's true in any circumstance. So you're careful in terms of the language that you use with him.
And when talk of Carney's standing ovation at the recent Davos summit came up, the Prime Minister was ready with a quip about Trump.
His was bigger. His standing ovation was bigger. Let's be clear about that.
With Canada-U.S. trade ties on shaky ground, Carney says he wants to draw closer to Australia. The Prime Minister will deliver that message in a speech to the country's parliament on Wednesday. JP Tasker, CBC News, Sydney.
Newfoundland and Labrador's government is taking a key step in developing Canada's first deepwater offshore oil project. St. John's has signed a preliminary agreement with Equinor and BP, opening the way to develop the Bay du Nord oil field 500 kilometers east of the province. As Mark Quinn reports, it's being hailed as an economic boon.
Newfoundland and Labrador is officially back in the oil and gas business.
Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Tony Wakeham was beaming as he announced the agreement to exploit an oil field more than 1,200 meters below the ocean's surface. It's expected to bring $6.4 billion in revenue during the first phase of the project, including $200 million from Equinor to build a floating dry dock, something the province hopes will mean work servicing naval and Coast Guard ships. Between that and a guarantee that Newfoundland and Labrador workers will build subsea structures, the agreement's expected to create hundreds of jobs.
It is not a rubber stamp or a hollow announcement. It is real jobs and real revenues.
The federal fisheries minister, Joanne Thompson, was there to represent Ottawa. She addressed concerns about the environmental impact of extracting more than 400 million barrels of oil.
Climate change, climate resilience, we need to honor environmental obligations, but at the same time, the world still needs oil. And, we are able to provide that, but we also can do it with the highest standards.
Equinor isn't fully committed to the project just yet. A final investment decision is scheduled for next year, with first oil planned for 2031. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app and streaming live on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up on this hour of the show, we're going to have a couple of interviews here about the conflict happening in the Middle East. Canada's response to the U.S.-Israel attack on Iran has been supportive. Coming up, we will talk to an expert on international law about how he sees it. That's coming up after 6:30. Also, the U.S. and Israel's widening war on Iran has led to closure of one of the world's biggest oil shipping routes, the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to talk to an energy expert about what this means for oil producers here in Canada. But first up here on the show, we'll hear about a newly expanded all-Canadian bus manufacturing facility that's now up and running right here in Winnipeg. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. It is 6:11 now, and here with a look at your CBC local news headlines is Heather Wells. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba woman was killed in a tourist bus crash Sunday in the Dominican Republic, and she is being remembered as a fearless adventurer. 67-year-old Colleen Fullerton of Lockport died in the crash. Her granddaughter, Brittany Fullerton, says her grandfather was also hurt and remains in hospital. Fullerton says this is her literal worst nightmare. We're going to hear more from her coming up. As well, Manitoba's Justice Department is working with Indigenous partners and the security industry to improve training for security guards. Minister Matt Wiebe won't comment, though, on the Dollarama case where a guard is charged with assault with a weapon. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells with a look at your CBC local news headlines. Coming up here to 6:12, want to say good morning to our amazing crew on the show today. Darren Morash is producing our live feed on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. Sierra Sanders is our show director, also taking your calls on our commuter line. And if you have a traffic tip, again, don't forget to give us a call at 204-788-3093. And Abby Adiyemi is also taking our show and, of course, giving us our forecast. Well, good morning, Abby.
Well, good morning, Marjorie. For the folks in the northern part of the country, of the province, rather, that extreme cold still continues, hence the yellow warning still in place. It's really gripping us, most of the northern part of the province. We're talking about wind chills and the values close to minus 50 in regions close to Churchill and the York region this morning, which means frost bites in minutes. So you need to take it easy. While for the southern part of the province, we're going to be dealing with more cloudy conditions. I'm tracking some freezing drizzle around the Dauphin area. So if you're on the road this morning, that might be something you need to take take into consideration with this below zero temperature we have and the freezing rain coming down. It might make the roads a bit slippery. For Winnipeg right now, we're looking at temperatures hovering around minus 12, cloudy conditions. We're aiming for a high of minus 9 today with some winds coming from the northeast. A good chance of light snow or some freezing drizzle might come towards the city this morning. Fog patches spotted outside the city. That should clear as you get into the morning. The wind chill just around minus 20 this morning. And similar conditions we're seeing in the southern region, a mix of overcast, skies, and that winter moisture is going to be, you will notice it as you start your day. We're seeing temperatures between minus 10 and minus 16. But up north, we're looking at temperatures between minus 23 and minus 36 at this time. And the wind chill really staggering around minus 48 in the Tuduli area and minus 51 in the Churchill region. So frostbite again in minutes. Take it easy. For Winnipeg right now, we're hovering around minus 12, minus 13.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Abby Adeyemi with a look at your forecast this morning. Sarah Sanders joins me now in studio with a look at what's happening out there on the roads.
Not too much going on out there right now, Marjorie. As you mentioned, as people start to wake up and get their days started, it's pretty quiet so far on the commuter line, and it has been pretty quiet on the commuter line the past few days, but I may eat my words, as I usually sometimes do when I say that, when you put it out into the universe. But either way, I do want to know what is going on out there. If you have something that is getting in your way or is causing backups, I'd love to hear about it. Whether you were here in the city or anywhere else in the province, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
.15 now. A new all-Canadian bus building facility is now up and running here in Winnipeg. It's the first time in 15 years they're being assembled entirely from start to finish right here in the city. New Flyer Industries says its facility located on Kernaghan Avenue focuses on zero-emission transportation. Last year, Ottawa anteed up $15 million for the plant on top of the $23.4 million provided by the province. Stephen King is the VP of Strategy and Investor Relations with New Flyer. He spoke with guest host Julie Buckingham on Up to Speed yesterday.
What we've seen is a significant increase in demand from Canadian customers that warranted the kind of advancing the full domestic production here in Winnipeg. So historically, we've started buses in Winnipeg and then finished them in the United States at a facility in Minnesota. And a few years ago, kind of went back to 2023, we saw significant, kind of signs that there was going to be increased funding and increased demand from Canadian customers. And so that gave us the ability to expand our facilities here and our ability to, create new jobs and hire more people and to really cater to customers across the country. It really has been driven by kind of increased demand as, more and more cities focus on public transit. And so, really exciting opportunity for us here in Winnipeg, which is our headquarters and our home base, to be able to add some additional capacity here to focus on Canadian customers and then free up some capacity in the U.S. for U.S. customers.
And I think that's what's super interesting. Many people would have seen the buses perhaps on a flatbed or moving, and they would understand, okay, that one's now going stateside to get finished and that kind of thing. So have you maintained a presence in the United States as well? It has been I'll use the term complicated relationship between the federal government here and in the United States. So is this sort of a great way for the company to maintain both of those footprints and continue to advance New Flyer in both countries?
Yeah, exactly right. So we do have production in Minnesota and in Alabama and in North Dakota. And so then as well, in Winnipeg. And so you're exactly right that, the thought process here was, hey, look, we've got increased demand from Canadian customers. We're finishing buses today for those customers in the United States. Let's try and do more in Canada. And so let's try and focus on, Canadian supply chain, Canadian jobs, and doing more bus builds here in Winnipeg. And so that's really kind of allows us to do both. And you're exactly right. We've seen lots of buses on flatbeds going on their way down to Minnesota. You'll still see some of those for U.S. customers because there are still some buses that start here in Winnipeg and then get finished in the U.S. but you'll see buses for Canadian customers. You'll see them on the roads here in Winnipeg, and so people have been joking. They felt like buses were lost because we had Toronto buses, Ottawa buses, Brampton buses driving around Winnipeg, and those buses are doing road tests before they ultimately find their way to the customers. So you'll definitely see a lot more city buses driving around Winnipeg, some for Winnipeg, because we are building Winnipeg buses at the facility, plus buses for other customers in cities across the country.
So take us through what this new facility will be doing.
So yeah, basically it's all of the, I'd say, larger component installation. So before we built a shell of the bus, which is basically the frame and the external structure, but then things like engine installation, axles, tires, doors, all of that was done, seats, all of that installation was done in the United States. Now we're able to do that full installation here in Canada. So we'll be able to install, batteries for electric buses or fuel cell systems for fuel cell electric buses. We'll be able to do the axles, the tires, transmission, HVAC systems, so heating and cooling. All of that will be done here. And then our new facility that we opened and that we had the grand opening for today is basically what we call customer acceptance and delivery, CAD. And that is where we do kind of final checks, final wheel alignments, water tests, because the bus has to go through a pretty detailed water test to make sure there are no leaks, go through final charging and final kind of electrical commissioning for those zero emission battery electric, fuel cell electric buses. And then it goes through kind of the final road tests. So basically now versus a couple of years ago when you could just do a start of a bus, now we can do that full bus build from start to finish all the way through here in Winnipeg. And Winnipeg's also the headquarters for our engineering and new product development. So a lot of the kind of design and engineering work already happens here. Now we've got the full manufacturing of buses here.
Are all of the buses that are being built here, are they all electric now, or are you still doing some traditional gas-powered ones?
So it's primarily electric. There are still the ability to do other types of vehicles and propulsion types. And so we kind of pride ourselves on our facilities always being what we call kind of propulsion agnostic, or able to meet whatever the customer's needs are. If it's diesel, CNG, diesel electric hybrid, or battery electric or fuel cell electric. Primarily the vehicles that you'll see coming out of the facility here in Canada are zero emission. So a lot of electric vehicles, and then for the city of Winnipeg, we have electric and we have fuel cell electric, the hydrogen buses that you'll see running around the city right now. And then we also, primarily I would say we see kind of the future in Canada, a lot of it is much more focused, I would say, on zero emission.
That is Stephen King, who is the Vice President of Strategy and Investor Relations with New Flyer Industries. A new Winnipeg bus building facility is now open, running, and creating zero-emission buses.
It's an honor to have you at the White House.
The stories that matter.
The opportunity is in the partnership.
As they happen.
There are some places that are never for sale.
And what they mean to you.
But never say never. Never say never.
For news you can trust, stay with CBC News.
6:21 now, and you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in Winnipeg right now. It is cloudy, currently -12, with a north-northeast wind right now at 30. If you've been following the news about the escalating war in the Middle East, chances are you've heard of the Strait of Hormuz. It's a shipping route that connects the Persian Gulf through to open ocean and the rest of the world. About a fifth of the world's oil passes through it. Traffic through the area has, of course, been disrupted by the conflict. Warren Mabey is the director of the Institute of Energy and Climate Policy at Queen's University, and he joins us now via Zoom from Kingston, Ontario, to talk about what this could mean for Canadians. Good morning, Warren.
Good morning.
Let's start with the Strait of Hormuz. Why is this area so significant when it comes to the global oil market?
Well, as you said in the intro, about 20% of the world's oil actually passes through this strait. And that's because countries like Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Kuwait and Iran, they all have major ports facing onto the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. That means that the tankers that are leaving those countries to supply other places around the world have to go through the strait. Saudi Arabia in particular is one of the biggest producers of oil in the world, and their largest port is right on the Gulf. And that means that all of that oil really is traversing this very narrow strip. When it is closed, and Iran has closed it, officially during this conflict, it becomes very risky and hard for ships to get through. And that's why it's so important to the global market.
Tell us a little bit more. What kind of impact is this U.S.-Israel war on Iran having on the supply, on the oil market?
Yeah, so almost immediately we've seen a run-up in prices. The price for Brent crude, which is sort of the international de facto price for oil, has gone up by about 7%. The continental price for oil in North America has gone up by about 7%. Canadian oil's gone up by about 6%. It shows you how interconnected the oil markets are. Anytime that there's a big disruption, and this is a big disruption to that global market, you immediately see it in all the different markets around the world. We're very interconnected, and we're seeing countries and companies responding very quickly to this conflict by elevating those prices.
Warren, do we have a sense at all how long this disruption will last?
It's hard to say. It always takes longer for prices to come down after a conflict. They go up very quickly at the beginning. If the conflict is short, and we can hope that it's a short, sort of a conflict, I think that prices could stabilize again relatively fast. The longer it goes on, the more disruption it creates in the global economy. This doesn't just impact the price of fuel, it impacts the price of a lot of other things that are being moved around the planet. And that means that, a protracted conflict or a conflict that expands could have more and more impacts as time goes on.
You talked about how the price of oil has gone up as a result of this. So how is this ultimately going to impact consumers here in Canada?
So we're already starting to see an increase in the price for gasoline. So gas has gone up by about 5 or 6 cents in most markets across Canada. It depends on where you are as to how much of a change you might have seen. We are seeing increases in price for diesel. That has an immediate impact on people's pocketbooks, and I think that we'll notice that immediately throughout the economy.
What about the price on other things besides oil, like consumer goods? I think of goods being shipped around the world. What about shipping costs? How will that be affected?
We'll start to feel that before too long. The conflict, as it goes on, will start to impact those prices because, of course, companies that are shipping things to you will have to start to account for those increased fuel prices. If everything is short, if the conflict were to wind up in the next couple of weeks, that might be a very, very mild impact. The longer it goes on, the broader this conflict becomes, the more likely it is that these price increases become more persistent, and the more likely it is that we start to feel that inflationary pressure associated with higher costs. And if we can avoid that, that would be best. But we do have to be aware that that's likely to come if the conflict persists.
Now, Warren, we have our own oil here. We have our own oil producers here. How is this conflict being viewed by Canadian oil producers?
So I think that Canada and the oil producers in Canada see this as a bit of an opportunity. We've heard from the energy minister that other countries are sort of calling, looking to see if we might be able to supply additional oil during this time. And I think we can. We have the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We have the ability to get a little bit more oil out into the marketplace. And that is a good thing for the companies that will be supplying it. It's an opportunity to grow their business, to maybe establish new ties and new opportunities that will continue to support them. I do think that Canada has an imperative to help support countries that are going to be impacted by this, and this is one way that we can do that.
Do you think that Canada, though, could keep up with, we don't know how long this is going to be happening in the Middle East, but do you think that Canadian oil producers could keep up with the demand if this war continues?
So I don't think we could cover every supply shortfall that's out there. We have to work with the infrastructure we have at hand, but I do think we could supply some. And I think that we can work with that infrastructure that we currently have, to work with in order to help some places deal with this conflict. So yeah, I think there's some opportunity.
Warren, what else are you going to be watching here when it comes to the long-term impact on the global market as this war between the U.S. and Israel and Iran continues?
Well, I'll be curious to see how different countries respond. In the 1970s, the oil crises led to a lot of energy diversification, a lot of investment in new technologies. If this is a long, protracted conflict, I expect that we'll start to have those conversations again. I do hope it's not. I hope for everybody's sake that the conflict resolves quickly, but I'll be watching.
Warren, I really do appreciate you joining us on the show this morning. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Warren Mabey is the director of the Institute for Energy and Climate Policy at Queen's University, and he joined us via Zoom this morning.
Do you agree with me on this? Yes. Wait a minute. Am I talking to myself?
When we debate online, we may as well be talking in an echo chamber. CBC is changing that. Manitoba Talks, a matching software that brings together people with opposing views. Different views, one conversation. Sign up today and challenge your perspective at cbc.ca/MB Talks.
6:29 now, and you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Right now in Winnipeg, it is cloudy, -12. At the airport, wind northeast at 30, looking at a high of -9 today. And we're also looking at some precipitation here, maybe some light snow mixed in with some freezing drizzle. Still ahead here, Christelle Ramlakan will join us with the very latest in business news. And we're going to stay with the war here between U.S., Israel, and Iran. We're going to be talking to an expert on international law about how he sees it. Stay tuned for that. Your CBC Local News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's -11 in downtown Winnipeg. A little bit cooler than seasonal today. Windy as well, a high of -9. A 67-year-old Lockport woman was killed in a tourist bus crash Sunday in the Dominican Republic. Family members say Colleen Fullerton had just arrived there with her husband for a 2-week vacation. WestJet says Sunwing customers were on their way to their hotels from the airport when the bus crashed. Brittany Fullerton says her grandmother was a fearless traveler.
They did a big trip to Scotland because of heritage. They wanted to go see their heritage a little more. They wanted to see the world. They went, I think, on 2 vacations a year for the last little bit. They were big into seeing what was out there.
Fullerton says her grandfather was also hurt in the crash and remains in hospital. She hasn't been able to speak with him, and her family has found it difficult getting information about his condition. Manitoba's Justice Minister says his department is working closely with the Indigenous community and the security guard industry. Matt Wiebe won't comment on the Dollarama case where a security guard is charged with assault with a weapon. Police say the guard used brass knuckles to hit a man attempting to leave with stolen merchandise. First Nations leaders say the victim is Indigenous. Wiebe is looking at more regulations for security guards, but he says he's focused on advice from Indigenous leaders.
Listen to those voices to ensure that we're providing the kind of training that addresses the concerns and issues that they're seeing out in community. I think there's lots of work and lots of ability for us to build out that training.
Wiebe says the government will have more to say shortly as the demand for private security guards grows. Day 5 of the war in Iran. Air raid sirens ring out again across Jerusalem. Now, Israel has launched a brand new broad wave of strikes on security headquarters in Tehran. According to Israeli Defense Forces, their attacks on the Iranian regime's infrastructure will be ramped up and neutralize Tehran's retaliation. Now, we are also getting word of a significant escalation in the Indian Ocean. Reuters reports a submarine attack on an Iranian ship off the coast of Sri Lanka. Local Navy and defense officials say at least 101 people are missing. 78 others are wounded. That attack took place earlier today in waters far removed from the primary conflict zone in the Persian Gulf. You can hear the latest on the war in the Middle East, as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Parents in Brandon say school lunch hour supervision isn't fair. Students who are bused to school are guaranteed supervision, while those who walk are not. If parents need their kids to stay at school over lunch, they have to pay $38 per student a month. Manitoba School Division Chair, our Brandon School Division Chair, Linda Ross, says it comes down to funding and legislation because lunch supervision is considered to be childcare rather than instructional time.
Working within those two acts to find some kind of solution, and also determining who's going to pay it. For Brandon School Division, where's that $1 million going to come from?
For now, the division is creating a central school lunch supervision program. The Minister of Education's office tells CBC school boards make their own budgetary decisions, including on lunchtime supervision. Locals in Thompson are cautiously optimistic about a new deal to take over the city's nickel mine. The deal will see the current owner, Vale, and 3 new partners invest up to $280 million in the mine. The owners say they don't plan to lay off workers and, in fact, hope to double production in 5 years. Jason Friesa is the president of the Thompson Chamber of Commerce.
Some of the things that we've struggled with up here is workforce retention, for example, through all kinds of sectors in Thompson. So I think that potentially stabilizes that going forward and just growing with the mine and whatever plans they have, every sector I think in Thompson can benefit from that for sure.
Vale bought the Thompson mine in 2006. Polar bears in northern Manitoba aren't quite as obsessed with humans as some may think. That's according to an 11-year study by researchers at the universities of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. It looked at the increasing frequency of interactions between bears and humans. It found no evidence run-ins happened because starving bears were seeking out humans in the hopes of finding food, but it was because of shrinking sea ice forcing more bears onto land, whether they were malnourished or healthy. Alex Crawford is an assistant professor at the Environment and Geography at the U of M.
As the sea ice declines, you're going to expect the polar bears to interact with humans more because they're going to spend more time on shore. So that's still true, but it's not like the ones that are less healthy are going to be more likely to come seek out humans.
The study covered more than 500 visits by bears to field camps near Churchill. Taking it to the limit. Cole Perfetti with just minutes to go in the third period, forcing overtime against Chicago. And then a quick goal from Mark Scheifele gives the Winnipeg Jets the overtime win 3-2. Head coach Scott Arniel says it's a good way to start an 8-game homestand.
We needed to get out of the gate here, and this 2 tonight against a team that was sitting 1 behind us, it was very important. And we went right to the wire and found a way, which was awesome. But at the end of the day, it's important that we got a tough Tampa team coming in here next, and to get that one under our belt is hopefully gives us some little bit of confidence.
And it is the Tampa Bay Lightning in Winnipeg tomorrow night. Puck drop at 7. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
You got to take that momentum, Heather, and you got to carry it with you because, as you mentioned there's a 8-game homestand there, and Tampa Bay is no easy team, that's for sure.
A tough one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells with your CBC local news. It is 6:36, and you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app, and on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. Let's take a look now at the forecast, because we actually do have some yellow level warnings that are in place right now. Abby Adeyemi is here with a look at the forecast. Hey, Abby.
Hey, and Marge, it's really, really cold up north with those dangerous wind chills in the valleys between -45 and -51 this morning. It just means that for folks in the northern part, take it easy. Frostbite in minutes, and it can even make you sick, so you need to take it easy. While in the southern part of the province, it's more about the cloudy conditions, and most of the regions might see a chance of light snow and some freeze and drizzle mixed in between, but the concern is about the northern part of the province this morning with those life-threatening deep freeze. For Winnipeg right now, still hovering around -12, cloudy conditions outside. We're aiming for a high high of -9 with some breezy conditions from the northeast later. There's still that good chance of light snow, or maybe you might see freezing drizzle throughout the day. Those fog patches, notice that the outside part of the city should be clearing this morning, but the wind chill around -21. And then tomorrow, we get to see highs near 1, but it's going to be around the figure says 0 for now, but I'm hoping for 1 tomorrow. For Modern wind cloud tunnel more is heading all the way towards Headingley and Port Prairie this morning, hovering around -10. Also cloudy conditions, aiming for a high of -6. A good chance of light snow or freezing drizzle in the forecast. Brandon all the way towards Nipawin, sitting around -12 with blowing snow in that western part of the province. We should see highs around -15. The wind chill this morning around -26, and that's going to be sticking around all day. Now, from Dauphin, tracking it towards Russell and all the way to the Roblin area, we're looking at -16 at this time. Light snow also falling in that part of the province. You get to be around -17 for your high today. The wind chill close to -30. Gimli and nearby areas in the Interlake region, -14 at this time. Cloudy conditions. You warm up to -9. A good chance of light snow or freezing drizzle also in the forecast. Now we head into the northern part of the province. The powerful influence surrounding communities, we're hovering between -23 and -28, depending on where you are in that region. Light snow falling there. A high of -21, while the wind chill close to -39. Risk of frostbite in play there. Thompson and Gillam, temperatures hovering between -31 and -35 at this time. Expecting sunny skies. Highs will be around -23. That will not warm things up because of the dangerous wind chills you're having in that part of the province. We're looking at -46 this morning. Lynn Lake towards Tuduli Lake, a boat sitting around -36, -37. Highs expected near -24, but a brutal wind chill of -48 this morning. While further north in Churchill, we're tracking -35 at this time with some ice crystals in the air. Highs will be around -28, while the staggering wind chill is around -51 this morning. So it's a concern for folks in the Churchill region. So we're seeing that split still. At the south, more cloudy conditions, while northern part of the province, we're looking at those dangerous wind chills close to -50. Winnipeg right now, -12, heading to a high of -9.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
If you are up in the north, please stay safe and stay warm up there. Sierra Standers joins us now in studio with a look at what's happening out there on your morning commute. Hey, Sierra.
Hi, Marjorie. It has been very quiet so far this morning in the first hour of the show. It's kind of lonely sometimes on the commuter line.
No.
Yeah, not too much going on out there, which to me sounds like your commute is going smooth out there. But if that's not the case and something has popped up or is getting in your way, I'd love to know about it so I can let your fellow commuters and listeners know. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
It is now 6:40, and you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. Well, Crystalie Ramlakan is here with the business report. Good morning, Crystalie.
Hey, good morning, Marjorie.
Prediction market bets on Iran strikes are spurring allegations of insider trading. Break the story down for us.
Yeah, so bets placed on the ousting of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, are drawing scrutiny of prediction markets such as Polymarket and Kalshi. So it's also sparking calls from U.S. lawmakers to outlaw wagers on military actions that could enrich officials with insider knowledge. So prediction markets offer tradable yes or no contracts that allow users to bet on a wide range of real-world events, from sports to politics to the economy. And U.S. lawmakers and analysts are flagging bets placed both in January and right before the attacks. There are concerns over the legality and ethics of such trades and the potential for insider trading. So on Polymarket's website, $529 million was laid on the timing of attacks, and $150 million was bet on the removal of Khamenei as supreme leader. So analytics firm Bubble Maps says 6 accounts made $1.2 million from polymarket bets. And similar concerns were also raised after a mystery trader made $410,000 betting on the ousting of Nicolas Maduro, who was the president of Venezuela at the time. Now, Polymarket says prediction markets harness the wisdom of crowds to create accurate, unbiased forecasts. And Kalshi says it does not allow wagers directly tied to death. It says it did not profit on the Khamenei market after refunding fees to users. But, prediction markets have really exploded in popularity since the 2024 U.S. election, when their real-time probabilities proved more accurate than polling in forecasting Donald Trump's victory.
Moving on now to retail news, Crystalie, and something on a Canadian retailer. Could Roots be going up for sale?
Yeah, well, Roots has launched a strategic review that it says could end with the sale of the clothing retailer. The business is framing the review as a way to analyze and evaluate a range of alternatives that will maximize value for shareholders. And over its 53-year history, the business has really cemented itself as a symbol of Canadiana. It has 100 corporately owned stores in Canada and 2 in the U.S., and it also has 100 shops in Asia. So the majority shareholder is an international private equity firm, but Roots is headquartered in Toronto and trades on the city's main stock exchange. And analysts suspect the review will show the company is a powerful but under-monetized heritage brand, and that the equity in the name is stronger than the business's current performance and scale. So in recent years, the company has invested more heavily in things like digital marketing, brand ambassadors, and partnerships with household names such as Barbie and Wicked. It also relaunched in China, and lately the CEO has been plotting to expand its presence in the U.S. And this review could help Roots decide which markets to double down on, where to exit, and whether public markets are still the right home for the business.
When I think of Canadian clothing, for sure, Roots is one of those companies that absolutely, comes to mind. Okay, let's turn our attention now to skiing. How is the skiing industry, Crystalie, trying to attract younger customers?
Well, for years, critics have complained about pricey ski passes, saying they help make snow sports unaffordable for all but the rich. So Vail Resorts has announced it is reducing the price of passes for skiers and snowboarders between the ages of 13 and 30. So the pass will cost 20% less for Gen Z. And the announcement comes after a challenging season for Vail. Snow was sparse in the West, including at its resorts in Washington, California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. And in January, the company announced it had seen 20% fewer visits than the season before. And Vail's chief executive says young travelers are prioritizing experiences when deciding how to spend their time and money. And they hope that they're going to make skiing and snowboarding part of that.
Very interesting. I grew up skiing. What about you?
A little bit, but there's not that much skiing there in Winnipeg and Manitoba. I used to think that, the hills that we had there were like big hills.
Yeah.
And then I went to other places and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I grew up in Alberta, so skiing, of course, one of the big activities out there, but very interesting. Yeah, report indeed. Thank you so much, Crystalie. Have a good day.
You too, Marjorie. Thanks.
That was Crystalie Ramlakan with the Business News. Dauphin, Manitoba-based Kate's Outlaw has some new music. This 4-piece group lights up stages with a blend of country grit and rock guitar licks. They have been busy in the studio finishing a second album slated for release this summer. Here is the new single from Kate's Outlaw. This is Wilder Side.
$10 for the door and $5 wine. Downed it before we got there. You got in line, girl, on a mission, I can see. Double fisting Seagram's 83. 2 fingers pointed when they played the dirt band. You put those solos in
That is a brand new tune from Winnipeg's very own Kate's Outlaw. That is Wilder Side. 6:50, you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. It is right now minus 12 in Winnipeg under a cloudy sky, on our way to a high of minus 9, some light snow mixed with freezing drizzle, possibly this afternoon. Hundreds of people have been killed in Iran since Saturday's attack by the United States and Israel. The death toll includes over 100 children. U.S. President Donald Trump has offered a range of explanations for why this attack was necessary. To look more closely at what international law says about preemptive strikes, we've reached Michael Link. He is a professor emeritus of law at Western University and has worked extensively in the area of human rights and international law and joins us via Zoom this morning. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
The U.S. Has said that the strikes were preemptive. What does international law say about preemptive strikes?
We've had a system of international law around for the past 80 years with the creation of the United Nations in 1945, and it tightly regulates what can be a justifiable war in this modern era. Essentially, it says that differences and disputes between states are to be mediated, are to be negotiated between those states through negotiations and through obedience to international law. The only two exceptions to this rule is, number one, a justifiable war can be engaged in if there's been a resolution from the Security Council allowing that, or number two, in self-defense, if one state is facing the imminent threat of an attack by another state, that it can launch a war of self-defense in response to that. Neither of those two circumstances exist in this case. There's never been a UN Security Council resolution giving a green light to the United States and Israel to attack Iran, and there doesn't appear to be been any credible threat of an imminent attack by Iran on the United States or Israel during this period of time. In fact, we know from what the country of Oman has said, that it was leading mediation discussions between Iran and the United States over the last several weeks. And it was very close, it said, to reaching a full and final agreement between Iran and the U.S., where Iran would give up its nuclear weapons program. And yet the United States still decided to go ahead and initiate this war. So this war does not have legitimacy under international law and would be deemed to be illegal.
Maybe you can give us some examples, Michael, here of the conditions that need to exist for one country to attack another.
Sure. I mean, either there's been a direct attack, you've bombed some part of my country, or you're massing troops on my border, and you've made belligerent threats to me, as Russia had done in the weeks leading up to the war of Russia against Ukraine in 2022. Those would be some of the clearest examples we have from recent times. None of that appears to have been present with respect to this present situation involving Iran.
The human rights abuses by Iran on its own people are well documented, Michael. What other options were there for the international community to stop this?
Sure. Look, I think it's clear that one can be, on the one hand, vehemently opposed to the dreadful record of human rights under the Iranian theocracy over the last 47 years, and particularly to the massive attacks that it launched upon its own people who were demonstrating for more freedom in January, and yet also say that this attack by the United States and Israel on Iran is a serious violation of international law. Indeed, it would be classified as a war of aggression that's more likely to make things much worse in Iran than to wind up making them better. This is also, I think, a major stain on the international reputation of the United States. It's if it can so easily resort to war, and this is the seventh country that the United States under the Trump administration has launched attacks on over the last 14 months, and apparently engage in pretend diplomacy while always meaning to go to war, lowers the reputation of the United States, even among its major allies, let alone adversaries like Russia or China, as to whether the United States can be trusted to keep its commitments and its word. Much better according to both international human rights law and to what actually works on the ground, would be for the world or the United States to sanction the regime, to isolate it internationally, and to support those who are seeking their rights, and to engage the regime in negotiations. Creative solutions are much more likely to be found in negotiations than in combat.
What about Canada's stance on this? What do you make of the comments that were made by Prime Minister Mark Carney?
Sure. He said two quite different things, I think, over the course of the last 5 days. On Saturday, when the war was launched, he issued a statement together with Foreign Minister Anita Anand, which essentially said that Iran is the principal source of terror and instability in the Middle East, and Canada supports the efforts of the U.S. to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons and to prevent its regime from further threatening peace and security in the region. It said nothing on this Saturday statement with respect to the fact that the war in Iran is clearly a violation of international law, and it said nothing with respect to supporting those countries who are engaged in diplomacy to try to prevent a war and to try to prevent a nuclear program in Iran. Now, he said on yesterday, in arriving from India to Australia, Prime Minister Carney has actually changed his approach, and he said that he's saying that we took this initial position with regret because the current conflict, he says, is another example of the failure of the international order. And he said this preemptive attack seems to, on its face, to be inconsistent with international law. And in doing so, Prime Minister Carney seems to be aligning himself with the very strong statements issued by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, and the French President Emmanuel Macron, all of whom said that this attack or these attacks are in violation of international law and urging a return to diplomacy.
Michael, we are going to have to leave it there, but really do appreciate you joining us on the show today.
Marjorie, thank you very much for having me.
Take care. Michael Link is a professor emeritus of law at Western University. Let's go now to Heather Wells and look at your headlines. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. A Manitoba woman killed in a tourist bus crash Sunday in the Dominican Republic is being remembered as a fearless adventurer. 67-year-old Colleen Fullerton of Lockport died in that crash. According to her granddaughter, Brittany Fullerton says her grandfather was also hurt and remains in hospital in the Dominican Republic. And parents in Brandon say school lunch hour supervision isn't fair. Students who are bused to school are guaranteed supervision, while those who walk aren't. If parents need their kids to stay at school over lunch hour, they have to pay $38 a student a month. We'll hear from one parent coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells there with your CBC local news headlines. Well, still ahead here on Information Radio, could a new kind of ultrasound machine become as common as the stethoscope? Our house doctor, Dr. Raj Bardwash, will join us to tell us what's behind the new technology coming up here on the show. It is -12 right now in Winnipeg under a cloudy sky, on our way to a high of -9. Chance of precipitation this afternoon. Cold level warning up for parts of the north, including Thompson, Churchill, and Lynn Lake. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned here to CBC Radio. Coming up next, World Report.
Winter Games Milano Cortina 2026 are almost here, and it all lives on CBC and CBC Gem. Access every Paralympic moment, all for free. With multiple live streams and full replays, CBC Gem puts you in control of the events you want to watch. Get ready for para ice hockey, wheelchair curling, and much more. It all begins March 6th. Watch free on CBC and CBC Gem.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Air raid sirens ring out again across Jerusalem as the war in Iran enters its 5th day. Israel says it has launched a new broad wave of strikes against security headquarters in Tehran. Israeli Defense Forces say their attacks on the Iranian regime's infrastructure will intensify, neutralizing Tehran's ability to retaliate. The CBC's David Common joins us from Tel Aviv. David, what more can you tell us about developments between Israel and Iran?
Well, Martina, there has certainly been no slowdown in the pace of either the attacks on Iran or Iran's response. Israeli forces have talked often about striking leadership facilities, which may speak to their attempts to kill the most senior officials in Iran's regime and its military force, including, frankly, those who might become the next supreme leader. The U.S., meanwhile, speaks a lot more about targeting things that can shoot. In other words, missile launchers and drones. U.S. Central Command says it's hit 2,000 targets in the first 100 hours of the conflict. Now, when I speak about Iranian missiles and drones, they have continued to target Israel. Sirens have wailed in this country through much of the overnight hours. Israel now saying one of its F-35 fighter jets destroyed an Iranian fighter in flight. That would actually mark the first time an F-35 has shot down anything anywhere during combat operations. Now, we talk about the tactics and the geopolitics of all of this, but people are at the heart. Civilians have died in Iran and Israel and beyond, and it appears that will continue.
Attacks intensifying as well between Israel and Hezbollah. What's the latest on that front?
This fight does not involve the Americans or the Iranians, not directly anyway. Hezbollah, a proxy force of Iran, and it has been firing rockets at northern Israel. Some get intercepted, some have landed. People have been hurt in Israel. Israel is not only using airstrikes in response against Hezbollah, they have moved ground forces into Lebanon. Tens of thousands of Lebanese people are therefore on the move to escape the escalating violence. This is certainly destabilizing to Lebanon, which has always been precarious. There is a ceasefire, or was a ceasefire, agreed to a year and a half ago between Israel and Hezbollah. That's over. And so there's the question about how and when the fight in Lebanon ends, just as there is with Iran. What the desired end state is and how many people will die before we reach that point, those are the big questions overarching all of this.
The CBC's David Common in Tel Aviv. Thank you, David.
Quite welcome.
Ambulances in Sri Lanka are rushing dozens of Iranian sailors to hospital following a suspected submarine attack in the Indian Ocean. More than 100 people are missing after an Iranian frigate was hit roughly 75 kilometers off the coast of Galle in the southern part of the country. Sri Lankan Navy units have pulled 32 survivors from the water, but dozens more remain unaccounted for. This deep-sea strike would mark a huge expansion of the conflict, thousands of kilometers from the front lines. NATO is issuing a stern warning to Tehran, formally condemning Iran's targeting of Turkey. A NATO spokesperson says the alliance stands firmly with all allies, including Turkey, in the face of what she called indiscriminate attacks across the region. NATO officials say their defensive posture remains strong across all domains, with a specific focus on bolstering air and missile defenses to protect the alliance's eastern flank. National security experts are warning of a growing safety gap in the United States since the start of the war with Iran. While security agencies are on high alert, many have been hollowed out by sweeping White House budget cuts. As Katie Nicholson reports, there are mounting concerns that the loss of expertise has left the U.S. vulnerable to a terror attack.
Key institutions like the CIA and the FBI have both had large-scale layoffs.
Daniel Byman is the director of the terrorism program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in D.C. He's been watching how Trump administration cuts, layoffs, and firings have reshaped the agencies that keep the nation safe, especially now that those same agencies are on high alert for any sign of Iranian terror attacks.
But the administration has reduced U.S. capabilities in this area, so the United States might be more vulnerable than it was a year ago.
Hundreds of FBI personnel have left, and hundreds more were reassigned from counterterrorism, cyber threats, and espionage to the administration's immigration crackdown.
And you can't simply remove those people and then replace them very quickly. That expertise, that network takes a long time to build.
Javed Ali lectures on counterterrorism at the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy. He says reassigning agents creates risk.
And if you're going to take priorities off one issue and refocus them on something else, you're going to have to understand that there may be a higher threat profile, and you aren't going to be able to understand what a threat looks like or track as many individuals as you were before.
The U.S. conflict with Iran also began during a now month-long funding shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security as lawmakers try to force change in its Immigration Enforcement Division. Yesterday, Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem told a Senate committee hundreds in their cybersecurity agency had been furloughed. Iran has long been considered a highly dangerous cyber threat. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Washington.
The man responsible for the deadly 2018 Humboldt Broncos bus crash is facing deportation to India within weeks. The tragedy continues to cause deep grief and debate. As the CBC's Karen Pauls reports, opinions remain divided on whether the truck driver should be allowed to stay here in Canada.
He was talented, plus he was a good leader in the room.
Russ Harold's son Adam was the youngest Humboldt Broncos player killed in the 2018 crash when a semi-truck driven by Jaskirat Singh Sidhu blew through a stop sign right into the path of the Saskatchewan junior hockey team's bus, killing 16, injuring 13 others.
It's a big loss in our family. It's probably the end of our family name.
Sidhu pleaded guilty to dangerous driving causing death. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but he's out on parole now, facing deportation.
So they're asking for my travel document. So once they get it, they're gonna decide a removal date.
He's going home. My son doesn't have that choice to come home.
Christina Hogan thinks Sidhu should be allowed to stay in Canada. Her husband, head coach Darcy Hogan, was killed in the crash. She's forgiven Sidhu.
And I just would hope that there's some way that he can forgive himself and know that he's allowed to be happy too.
Sidhu's immigration lawyer, Michael Green, has filed an application for him to stay in Canada on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. Sidhu's young children and wife are Canadian citizens. His son has a rare lung disorder.
We don't need to do this. We're Canadians. We value forgiveness.
Green says the application will be processed even when Sidhu is deported. But he argues dividing this family would further compound the pain in an already unfathomable tragedy. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Calgary.
Mexican officials are facing a major PR challenge. They're trying to convince soccer fans the country is safe. There are fewer than 100 days before the first kickoff, with Guadalajara preparing to host FIFA World Cup matches, even as it recovers from last month's deadly wave of cartel violence and road blockades. As Jorge Barrera reports, not everyone is believing the government line.
Perla Montes de Oca says a shadow still lingers in the back of her mind that violence could again strike Guadalajara, the capital of Jalisco, which is one of 3 cities in Mexico hosting World Cup of soccer matches starting in June. Montes de Oca owns a restaurant stand inside the city's match stadium. She says she trusts that authorities have prepared for every possible scenario. Local business leaders say the danger has passed.
Things happen in every country since we are alive.
Gustavo Stufert is vice president of Jalisco's tourism board. He says it's time to move past the February 22nd violence when armed groups torched vehicles to block roads after Mexican special forces killed top drug lord Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho.
People are going to have fiesta all around. People can be sure that everything will be all right and will be secure.
That's the message Mexico's government is also sending.
Aquí, desde esta tribuna,
we can confirm that Mexico is at peace. Soccer can be enjoyed with calm, says Rosa Isela Rodriguez, Mexico's Secretary of the Interior, at a recent World Cup event in Guadalajara, but the city remains on edge as federal security forces maintain heavily armed patrols. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, Guadalajara, Mexico.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app and streaming live on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up on this hour of the show, spring break is around the corner, but with the recent unrest in Mexico and rising tensions in the Middle East, have Winnipeggers reconsidered their travel plans? CBC's Jim Agapito found out More about that coming up. We're going to hear that after 7:30. Also, we'll hear about how a long-standing Canadian radio show and local comedy festival are celebrating separate milestones together. But first up here, could a new kind of ultrasound machine become as common as the stethoscope? Our house doctor, Dr. Raj Bardwaj, will tell us what's behind this new technology that's already making healthcare more efficient. Stay tuned for that. Let's turn now to Heather Wells with a look at your CBC local news headlines. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. A 67-year-old Lockport woman was killed in a tourist bus crash on Sunday in the Dominican Republic. Family members confirm Colleen Fullerton had just arrived there with her husband for a 2-week vacation. WestJet says Sunwing customers were on their way to their hotels from the airport when that bus crashed. Brittany Fullerton says her grandfather was also hurt and remains in hospital. We'll hear more on that story. As well, Manitoba's Justice Department is working with Indigenous partners and the security industry to improve training for security guards. Minister Matt Wee won't comment on this week's Dollarama case where a guard is charged with assault with a weapon. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells with your CBC local news headlines. It is now 7:12, and we do have some very, very cold weather up north here in Manitoba today. Abby Adiemi joins us more with a look at that forecast. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Marjorie. The split still continues. Light snow, freezing drizzle in the southern part of the province and life-threatening freeze up north as we're still more like day 4 of this freeze in the northern part of the province. Hence, this yellow extreme cold warning we have in effect, and it remains in effect for like a few, maybe today, tomorrow. We're still going to see the warnings in place because of this prolonged dangerous wind chills. Values minus 44 to minus 55. Looks like Manitoba might just be like the coldest, might be getting the coldest wind chill in the country as we speak. Expect this to stay through the morning. The risk of frostbite is in play on exposed skin, so take it easy. For Winnipeg right now, we started the day around minus 12 under this overcast sky. This will stay with us for most of the morning. Wind chills around minus 22. We're tracking a 30%, 60% chance of light snow or freezing drizzle this morning. Fog patches clearing as the commute gets on the way. Expect a high to be around a minus 9. But the real story is the wind gusts coming from the north, which would pick up to about 50 kilometers by the noon period. So watch out for that. Similar conditions across the south. But up north, we're looking at wind chills close to minus 51 this morning.
Stay safe. Stay warm up there.
Please be safe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi there with a look at your forecast. Want to say good morning to our crew here on the show. Darren Morash is producing our feed on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. Sarah Sanders taking your calls and what you're seeing out there on the morning commute. And so far, it's been pretty quiet, hasn't it?
It has been quiet, Marjorie, and that's been the theme of this week so far. It's been pretty quiet on the commuter line, so things are moving smoothly out there on your commute this morning. But also want to remind folks that the Nestaway River Trail is still open, but parts of it have been closed so they can get some maintenance done as the temperatures do start to warm. So the Forks port to Queen Elizabeth Way and Queen Elizabeth Way to Churchill Drive, that part of the Nestaway River Trail is closed now for the season, but there are still tons of ways that you can get out on the river trail. And I would suggest maybe getting out there, especially as this weather does start to heat up. Get in your last little skates there so you can enjoy that time there. But looking to the commute, if there's anything that pops up, I'd love to hear about it. Give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Coming up now to 7:15. If you've been to the emergency room lately, you may have noticed doctors and nurses using a new tool to evaluate patients. It's called point of care ultrasound, or POCUS. It's basically a smaller, portable version of the classic ultrasound machine. Point of care ultrasounds are even featured on the popular medical drama The Pit.
Ultrasound works off a cell phone. Ooh, that's cool. If you can't feel a pulse, check for Doppler flow with this. It's a mini ultrasound. Follow the screen prompts.
Outside of the ER, ultrasound is also being used more in everyday practice, and some say it may one day be as common as a stethoscope. Our regular house doctor, Raj Bardwaj, is using ultrasound more often these days to deliver urgent care, and he's here to tell us why. Good morning, Dr. Bardwaj.
Good morning, Marjorie.
Tell us more about this new kind of ultrasound.
Yeah, so like in the clip, it's sort of like a mini ultrasound, right? So ultrasound in general is a tool that we use to look inside the body using sound waves to create an image on a screen. So I think a lot of people are familiar with ultrasound being used during pregnancy to look at the developing fetus. In this context, in the emergency department, urgent care, doctor's offices, we're talking about this sort of mini ultrasound, right? The point of care ultrasound, POCUS. So same tech used differently. So instead of going to a diagnostic imaging department in the hospital or a radiology office in the community, we're using portable ultrasound machines right at the point of care, right at the bedside. And usually it's to answer yes or no type questions in the moment. And it's not the same as being sent for a formal ultrasound scan, where they get you to maybe not eat for 12 hours beforehand or to drink a bunch of water, not empty your bladder. All of that stuff optimizes the scan. With us, we're just using it on whoever needs it, in the moment. And when I started medical school, ultrasound was a tool used only by radiologists. But over the last 20, 25 years, it's become more and more common to the point where ultrasound is getting to be an essential skill. Like being able to use an ultrasound machine is an essential skill, probably will be as essential as being able to use a stethoscope properly.
Why is it becoming so much more common these days?
Yeah, it's kind of like how computers used to be big, heavy machines, and now we basically all carry supercomputers in our pockets, right? So over the last 10 or 20 years, ultrasound machines have gone from being big, like shopping cart-sized machines to being handheld, like your phone or like a laptop, with image quality that is very good. It's not as good as the bigger versions, but it is good enough to make very important decisions with. The other thing is that X-ray and CT scans use radiation. Ultrasound does not. So if we can get accurate information from an ultrasound scan, we can avoid the radiation as well as maybe more other invasive tests. It's also a lot more accessible in remote areas, right? So if you're working in a rural emergency department, it's after hours, somebody comes in, and you're thinking, oh man, I might need an X-ray here. If I need an X-ray, I need to call the X-ray tech back to the hospital to warm up the machine and shoot some X-rays. Or you can just use an ultrasound in some cases. Even in space, they use ultrasounds. In January, one of the astronauts on the International Space Station had a medical event. The other astronauts were able to use the onboard ultrasound machine plus guidance from mission control on the ground to help figure out what was going on. Now back on Earth, it's becoming more and more common. It's another tool that we use along with our stethoscopes and our blood pressure machines and those things that we use to look in your ears and stuff. And then we review the images on the spot, and we can, that can help to guide immediate clinical decisions.
What sorts of things is point of care ultrasound being used in now?
So these days, it's used in very specific circumstances, usually to answer like yes or no type questions. Whereas formal ultrasounds are much more thorough. They measure things really precisely down to millimeters. Like, is that cyst on your ovary still there, and is it bigger or smaller than it was before? So the classic use case of POCUS is in trauma, which is why you see it being used on TV shows like The Pit. So imagine you've been hit by a car. The ambulance brings you into the emergency department. We can tell that your belly really hurts. We need to know, is there bleeding inside your belly from internal organ damage, like a torn liver or something? So POCUS can be used to give us a very fast yes or no answer to that question. And if no, that changes the sort of the flow of your care, right? If there's no blood inside your belly, then great. You don't necessarily need to go to the operating room. Maybe you don't even need a CT scan and the radiation exposure that comes from that. But if POCUS says, oh yeah, there's blood in there, then you need to have a more thorough CT scan, or maybe just go straight to the operating room and have a trauma surgeon open you up and fix wherever this bleeding is coming from. So it makes these crucial decisions very quickly. So point of care ultrasound, so far, time sensitive, yes or no type questions, but it's getting applied to other things as well, right? Because sometimes ultrasound is better than traditional x-rays. So things like finding a collapsed lung, ultrasound's actually better, more sensitive than a traditional x-ray. It's also faster and cheaper than something like an MRI for identifying tendon and muscle tears, things like that. Nurses are using ultrasound to help to find a vein under your skin to start an IV. So if there's some people, they say, oh man, I'm a really hard poke and the nurse needs to poke me 5 or 6 times, or we can use an ultrasound and maybe get it on the first try. As the technology gets better and it gets cheaper, we're going to use it more and more for all sorts of different things.
Dr. Bardwash, how widely are these ultrasounds being used here in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, in the emergency department in Canada these days, it's pretty much ubiquitous. Not so much in family doctors' offices or urgent cares or walk-ins quite yet. But even back in 2021, there was a survey of rural doctors in BC. And 87% of doctors surveyed said that they had access to POCUS. Interesting, back then, not all of them were using it. Because they hadn't been trained on how to use it yet. But these days, the medical residents, the medical students are often learning ultrasound skills as part of their training. And practicing doctors like myself, there are lots of courses that we can take to get better at it. So I think it's going to be more commonly used in the coming years.
Do you think that it will come to a point where people don't need to be sent out for formal ultrasounds, as you called them, or that they will replace stethoscopes in doctors' offices?
I mean, I'm a fan of Star Trek. I hope I get a tricorder before I retire, but I don't think that's happening. So in terms of replacing, formal ultrasounds, they are the same tool used to answer different questions. So it's kind of like a car can't replace a transport truck. They're vehicles that get you from point A to point B, but they do different jobs. And so when your doctor sends you for a formal ultrasound, it's doing a different job. The images are being collected by an ultrasound tech whose entire training and job is just to get good ultrasound images. Those images are then formally reviewed, interpreted by a radiologist who is a doctor who has, spent at least 5 years specializing in medical training. The machines are still much higher resolution than the handheld POCUS machines. And the whole point of doing a formal ultrasound is that it's broad, it's thorough. The images can be optimized by having people not eat or not pee, things like that. So POCUS isn't going to replace formal ultrasounds because they are used to answer different questions. Could POCUS replace a stethoscope? Maybe. I mean, the problem is cost right now, right? So a good enough stethoscope is probably $25. A really high quality stethoscope, maybe $250. But a cheap handheld ultrasound is probably still a few $1,000s. I think there's no telling what will happen in the future in terms of technology and AI enhanced stuff. But I can say for sure that, being part of the generation where I can remember life before POCUS. Mm-hmm. And now I get to grow my skills and help take better and faster care of patients using this new technology that has come out since I've come out of med school. This is super fun. And this is part of what's, the fun part of being a doctor.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Bardwash, thank you so much for joining us today here on the show.
My pleasure.
That is our house doctor, Dr. Raj Bardwash.
The tiny arrow on your car's fuel gauge. Speaking of your car, how about the minuscule treadwear indicators on your car tires? And then there's the bread clip. Terry O'Reilly tips his hat to the tiny, small innovations that make our lives better. Small wonders, tiny inventions, big impact on Under the Influence. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen.
7:24, you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. We've actually cooled off since the last hour here in Winnipeg at the airport. Right now, it is -13 and cloudy, looking to get up to a high of -9. There is the chance of some light snow and freezing drizzle today. Also want to mention as well, too, we have a yellow level cold warning for parts of the north. Wind chill could feel anywhere between -45, -50 for areas like Thompson, Lynn Lake, and Churchill. So something to keep in mind if you have to be outside there later today. Well, it is time to check in with Scott Regier and a look at your morning sports. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Marjorie.
Well, an overtime win for the Winnipeg Jets last night.
Yeah, a win over Chicago, Marjorie, that did not look particularly likely late in regulation. But Cole Perfetti, with a last-minute goal there, sent it to the extra frame where Mark Scheifele, as he's done so many times in the past for Winnipeg, decided things in OT. That keeps the Jets' slim playoff chances alive. They're given a 7% chance, if you're wondering. And Scheifele credits his teammates for the belief they can make it into the postseason.
You know, the guys in this room want to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and see what happens. And, you know, we have a great group of guys in here. You know, it's fun to come to the rink and, you know, we're just going to push each other until the end of the year and just see what happens. That's all we can do. That's all we can control, and just control the controllable.
There you are. With the trade deadline coming up Friday, we'll see if management also holds that belief. Winnipeg's 9 points out of the final wild card spot and will continue a homestand tomorrow against the Tampa Bay Lightning.
A lot of folks here keeping an eye on what the Jets are going to be doing around that trade deadline.
Could be a busy couple days.
Yeah, the Brier is underway. Manitoba has a few teams there, of course. But there is perhaps a surprising name atop the leaderboard at the Brier, Scott.
There is, although when I say it, Marjorie, anyone who follows the sport will be pretty quick to say, what are you talking about? Kevin Cooey is the name, and since he's won 4 national and 2 world titles in the past, that may seem a strange way to characterize what he's done so far in St. John's. But when you consider, Marjorie, the Calgary-based skip's unorthodox lead-up to this Brier, it should surprise that he has started 5-0. Since winning his provincial title in January, Cooey and his teammates haven't played together at all. Tyler Tardy served as an alternate on Brad Jacobs' gold medal winning rink in Milano Cortina, while Aaron Slaczynski had a broadcasting gig at the Winter Games. Here's Cooey.
It's been weird coming into this. We had such a long break, close to 2 months, and Tyler and Aaron were over in Italy for the Olympics, so we didn't play practice once as a team until we got here. So a little unique, but, you know, everyone's practiced on their own, and we're feeling good, but I think we still feel like we can pick it up a little bit.
There you are. Kevin Cooey, feeling good, and it shows. Cooey's already beaten 2 of the country's top 5 rinks in Mike McEwen and Matt Dunstone. Speaking of whom, in a battle of Manitoba, Dunstone came out on top over Braden Calvert yesterday. So Calvert lying at 3-2, Dunstone at 4-1. Both those Manitoba teams in action today at noon Central. Dunstone taking on Yukon, Calvert up against Winnipegger Mike McEwen, who's representing Saskatchewan. Never quite know which jurisdictions players are representing these days. It's all very volatile in the sport.
Yeah. Scott, let's head to the pitch now where the latest sporting battle between Canada and the U.S. goes tonight.
Yeah, and this rivalry, Marjorie, boils just like the ones between the nation's hockey teams. Canada's women's soccer side hasn't beaten the Americans very often, just 4 times in 67 attempts. But there have been many memorable battles. Christine Sinclair's hat-trick game at the London Olympics. Jessie Fleming's penalty kick that saw Canada through to the gold medal game in Tokyo. The stakes aren't quite so high with the two sides meeting today in Columbus at the She Believes Cup, but they're there, especially with Donald Trump's recent jokes about having to invite the U.S. women's hockey team to the White House for fear of being impeached. Canadian soccer coach Casey Stoney was asked how she felt about those comments.
I have a responsibility to make sure that I stand for what I believe in, which is everybody should have access to sport, everybody should be treated the same. And I think sport is such a powerful vehicle and tool to make sure that society respects women. Unfortunately, we can't change certain people's attitudes, but all we can do is keep making sure that the advert on the pitch is good, that we're putting our players out as role models.
A win over the U.S. today would be huge, Marjorie, and with Canada scoring 4 times in its last game against Colombia, momentum does seem to be building, as does rhetoric ahead of this game. This is part of a preview written up by SB Nation, one of America's best-known sports blogs. It reads, quote, "It's pretty great beating Canada at international sports. It can't be overstated how satisfying it is to take on a country with the little brother energy of a nation that has to fight not to be culturally absorbed by the U.S., end quote." Kickoff is at 5:45 Central on TSN.
Interesting. Kind of adds a little bit.
That's one word.
Yeah, to the rivalry between Canada and the U.S. Scott, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You bet.
Scott Rigg here with a look at your morning sports. Stay with us. Your CBC Local News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's -12. We've dropped a degree, headed to a cool and windy -9 today. A Manitoba woman killed in a tourist bus crash Sunday in the Dominican Republic is being remembered as a fearless adventurer. 67-year-old Colleen Fullerton of Lockport died in the crash, according to her granddaughter. Brittany Fullerton says her grandfather was also hurt and remains in hospital. Fullerton first found out about the crash from their traveling companions and later from RCMP.
My literal worst nightmare was this situation, and I told her that every time that I was worried for her, and she told me, you can't live your life in fear. You can't let that dictate how you live your life. And things happen, and you can't be afraid of them. And she did just that.
WestJet says Sunwing customers were being taken from the airport to their hotels when their bus crashed. The airline says the bus had been contracted by Nexus Tours, and WestJet says it is working with that company and local authorities to support the impacted guests. Manitoba's Justice Department is working with Indigenous partners and the security industry to improve training for security guards. Justice Minister Matt Wiebe won't comment on the Dollarama case where a security guard is charged with assault with a weapon. Police say the guard used brass knuckles to hit a man who was trying to leave with stolen merchandise. First Nation leaders say the victim is Indigenous. Wiebe says he has been focused on culturally sensitive training for security guards.
We know that we need a robust training curriculum, one that's reflective of the realities, and we need to ensure that security guards understand what their role is.
Wiebe admits the government has more work to do as demand for private security guards grows among Manitoba businesses. It is now day 5 of the war in Iran. Air raid sirens ringing out across Jerusalem today. Israel has launched a new broad wave of strikes on the security headquarters in Tehran. According to Israeli Defense Forces, their attacks on the Iranian regime's infrastructure will be ramped up and neutralize Tehran's retaliation. You can hear the latest on that story as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. The Manitoba Legislature reconvenes today after its winter break. Healthcare and ongoing deficits are expected to be major topics. Thompson is hopeful after a new deal for Vale to operate its local nickel mine. The mine will continue running with investment from 3 new partners, including the Canada Growth Fund. Glenn Boxall has worked for 31 years at the Vale mine in Thompson. He says employees have been worried about layoffs or shutdowns.
For at least the last 15 years, our workforce has had an axe over its head. We've gone through a couple of workforce adjustments that just about decimated us. And to know that we have a company now that is interested in investing, a lot of people are relieved.
The new owners hope to both hire more workers and double production in 5 years. School buses and school lunches. In Brandon, some parents say the system isn't fair. Students who live within 1.6 kilometers of their school do not qualify for transportation. That means they also don't get supervised school lunches unless they pay at a cost of $38 a student a month. Raina Wilkinson is leading the charge for more equitable supervision and calling for more provincial funding.
You could be paying the same taxes and live across the street, and one family would have transportation and lunch supervision covered, and the other has to come up with all of that on their own, which is the first inequity. The second is safety.
The Minister of Education's office says it is up to school boards to make budgetary decisions like lunchtime supervision. A new study suggests hungry polar bears in northern Manitoba aren't seeking out humans for food. Researchers at the universities of Manitoba and Saskatchewan found shrinking sea ice is forcing bears to spend more time on land. As a result, they say bears and humans are interacting more. They say those interactions involve bears of all body conditions, not just the skinny ones that haven't been able to hunt enough seals on the ice. Alex Crawford is an assistant professor of environment and geography at the U of M.
If a polar bear is desperate and starving and happens upon a human, that is still a more
risky interaction than if the polar bear is fat and happy. And they're more likely to either seek your food or seek you out as food if they are desperate.
The study covered 11 years and documented more than 500 visits by bears to field camps near Churchill. 4 straight overtime decisions for the Winnipeg Jets.
Onto the ice, Shifley, score!
Mark Shifley on TSN as the Jets edge Chicago 3-2 in overtime. Head coach Scott Arniel says it is the way his team needed to start this 8-game homestand. While the Jets stumbled in the second, Arniel says his bench came alive for the third period.
All of a sudden you heard this sort of rumble on our bench. You could hear the sort of, guys, commenting about, all right, that's it, keep doing it, keep pouring at them like that, and keep chipping it by them and keep finishing. And so the communication was starting to build on the bench, and then it swung.
And Arniel hopes his team keeps it up because in town next tomorrow night, the Tampa Bay Lightning. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells with your CBC Local News 736. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app and streaming live on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's turn our attention now to the forecast. Kind of 2 different conditions or temperatures or weather forecasts that we're looking at here, Abby. It's a little bit warmer here to the south, but we do have some concerning colds up in the north.
Yeah, extreme cold warning is still in place across northern Manitoba this morning. We're talking about dangerous cold and wind chills and the values of minus 45 to minus 51 this morning, making frostbite happen in minutes on exposed skin. So you need to take it easy now. While the north is facing those life-threatening deep freeze, down south it remains cloudy. There's a slim chance of light snow and even freezing drizzle might be coming with that as temperature hovers between minus 10 and minus 17 across the region. For Winnipeg right now, we are around minus 12. It's cloudy outside. You can expect a chance of light snow or some freezing drizzle in the city with breezing northwest winds. A high for the city gets to about minus 9 today. For Modern towards Winkler and nearby areas, we're seeing minus 10 there. Cloudy conditions also warming up to minus 6. Similar conditions to Winnipeg, slim chance of light snow and freezing drizzle. Brandon, we're looking at minus 13 there. Light snow and blowing snow at this time. You warm up to about minus 15 and later. For Dauphin towards Russell all the way to the Roblin area, we're seeing minus 17. Light snow falling in that part of the province. Highs will be around minus 16, but just watch out for that biting morning wind chill close to minus 30 this morning. It's a risk of frostbite in play there. Gimli minus 14, cloudy, good chance of light snow. High today minus 9. For the Par, Flin-Flon surrounding community, we're seeing temperatures hover between minus 24 and minus 28 at this time with light snow. Highs would only be around minus 21. Thompson, we're kind of seeing minus 32 there, partly cloudy. You warm up to minus 22, but the extreme wind chill value is around minus 45 on exposed skin, so you need to take it easy. For Gillam, we're looking at misty conditions there, minus 35 at this time. While Lynn Lake and Tudor Lake are kind of even colder. We're seeing minus 37, minus 38, depending on where you are. Clear conditions, these regions will be seeing highs close to minus 24. However, the dangerous wind chill is close to minus 49 there. And further north you travel towards Churchill, we're seeing ice crystals there. Current temperatures around minus 36. Highs would be around minus 28, but the bone chilling wind chill feels like minus 51 this morning. So also a risk of frostbite. Please take care out there. So it's more like a split between, light snow, freezing drizzle down south, and dangerous frozen northern part of the province today. But Winnipeg, we are at minus 12 now.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Abby Adeyemi there with a look at your forecast. Let's also say good morning to Darren Morash, who is our CBC Manitoba YouTube producer. Sierra Sanders joins me now in studio with a look at that commute, and still quiet.
It is quiet out there. I'm things are moving smoothly out there from the sounds of it. I mean, if we were to take the commuter line as an example, it's an example of the commute being pretty quiet, which is good, means things are moving along smoothly out there here in the city and from what it sounds like around the province. And a reminder again, I mentioned this before, make sure to get out on the Nestaway River Trail if you haven't yet or you were thinking about it. This would be the time to do it. They have closed parts of the trail for maintenance and to get some stuff done as the thaw is starting to come. So the Forks Port to Queen Elizabeth Way is closed, and then Queen Elizabeth Way to Churchill Drive is closed. So that portion of the Red River there is closed, but there's still quite a bit of the trail open there. For example, the Forks Port to Donald Street to the legislature to Osborne Bridge, and the Osborne Bridge to Hugo Docks.
I got my skates sharpened, but I haven't used them yet. I have to take advantage of that.
You should. You really should. And then as well, all of the trails around the Forks, CN Stage, the Port Rink as well are open there at the Forks. So get out there if you haven't and take advantage of that, especially with this mild weather that we're having. Don't need to bundle up as much, but still to get good to get out there and enjoy the weather here and the trail while it is still open. 204-788-3093 is the number to call if there is something getting in your way. And I can let your fellow listeners and commuters know.
Thank you very much, Sierra.
Thank you.
Sierra Sanders there with a look at your commute this morning, 7:41, and you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. 2 decades ago, a now classic Canadian radio show premiered at a local comedy festival. While the Debaters celebrates 20 years, the Winnipeg Comedy Festival is marking its 25th.
Hey Canada, it's the Debaters! The Debaters, where comedians fight with facts and money, and this audience picks the winner. Now here's our patron saint of laughs, Steve Patterson.
Oh, yes, you recognize that theme. The milestones are being celebrated with a special up-close and personal show, including 2 new debates recorded for CBC Radio. Steve Patterson is, as you know, the host of the Debaters, and Dave Hemstad is hosting shows at the Gas Station Arts Centre during the festival, and they both join me now via Zoom. Well, good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stephen, the weather and the traffic are, wow, that was a lot.
Yeah, it is. Welcome to Winnipeg. I want to start off by asking both of you, Steve, what is so special about this show and this festival that you think keeps drawing people and why it's kept the show and the festival running for so long?
I think the fact that we never really know exactly what's going to happen is kind of the secret sauce on this show. We know the comics are great. They're going to put effort into it. Canadian comedians are the funniest in the world, so we got that going for us. But the element of not really knowing exactly what's going to happen when 3 comedians are on the stage together is a unique thing, I think, in comedy. And we've just built up trust over the years. You know, the audience has been so gracious to us in Winnipeg. We love coming back. So it's always a fun show.
And Dave, what do you think? Why do you think it's been running for so long?
2 reasons. First of all, the concept that Richard Side came up with of having comedians argue what are often the most ridiculous subjects. And then I think Steve Patterson as host is the other reason for this success. His ability to read the room, to know when to let the comics play because they have it, or when he should jump in to keep the balloon off the ground and keep the air going. And, you know, he's got a kind face and he's just so gosh darn likable. And radio loves the kind face. Sorry, Dave. Here's your $5, buddy. I'm setting it. You said 20. You said 20. I know what I said.
Inflation, right?
Right.
Steve, 20 years now. How did you, take us back a little bit, how did you come to host the Debaters?
I don't really know. I'm very happy that I do. It's certainly my favorite thing to do, and you know, one of the greatest gigs I think in comedy, period. So I'm very fortunate to have it. I had done a demo at the Halifax Comedy Festival of something else right around the time that the original Debaters host, Sean Majumder, was not able to keep hosting. So I think Sean put in a word, and I had just done another project with CBC Radio, and the timing just kind of really lined up. So I'm really fortunate because it's certainly what people know me best from, but also I get to work with all my
comedian friends on a regular basis, which you don't normally get to do in stand-up. So it's really a blessing that way.
What are some of your favorite memories, Steve, of the first tapings that you had with the show?
Well, we taped at I think all the shows have incredible moments in them where there's just this wall and waves of laughter that, I don't remember experiencing during my stand-up. So it's must be the other comics that are bringing it. But, even the first tapings in Winnipeg at we've taped it at quite a few places, the Warehouse Theater. We've taped at now our home now for the last few years has been the same, but we've moved around Winnipeg, and Dave's persevered through power outages before. Every time Dave's on, it's great. So the element of unknown can be terrible in comedy, but we seem to always be able to harness it and make it work. We also Dave successfully defended big oil on the Debaters, which is rare unless you're doing it in Alberta, and we weren't. We were doing it in Quebec. So we get to bring up topics that comedians don't normally get to chime in on.
Steve, how does it feel to bring it back full circle and come back to Winnipeg where it all began?
It feels great. I'd like it to be a little warmer. So I listened to the weather forecast. I'm hoping to get above -50 would be nice, but it feels great. It feels like we're coming back to to the womb, sort of. And Dave mentioned Richard Side is the creator of the show, our eternal papa, but Winnipeg is the one that launched this show. So I'll always have a soft spot for Winnipeg, and I'm super happy that we're doing one in the gas station theater as well, because that's a more intimate setting, and it's one of my favorite places, and I think all comedians' favorite places to perform in Canada.
Dave, what do you love about hosting shows for the Winnipeg Comedy Festival?
Well, obviously the chance to be in Winnipeg this time of year, as you know, where else in Canada would you rather vacation? But the parking lots are just, the way the light hits the gravel. But one of the things, the best thing about the comedy festival is all the comedians are in town. We have so much talent in this country, and as Steve was saying, we don't often get to work together. So just being at the hub of the Comedy Fest, which the Gas Station Arts Center is, and also the Gas Station Arts Center, or GSAC, as those of us on the inside call it.
It rolls off the tongue.
It doesn't. Well, it's a mouthful to say Gas Station Arts Center, but it is the hub of comedy. It's a nonprofit organization, and I think those need our support more than ever. They put on fantastic shows, and so for me to have a chance to help them out, to help put shows on, to help the arts, and the Winnipeg Comedy Fest is one of their biggest fundraisers. That's how they raise money to put on events all year. So it's twofold. One, I get to watch great shows and be around great comedians, but also I get to help out the Gas Station Arts Center, which is a arts hub in Winnipeg.
Dave, what's in store for people when they come to the Winnipeg Comedy Festival?
Well, lots of laughter. Lots of laughter. I don't care which show you go to. You're going to be laughing. I can tell you that at the G-Stack, we've got Laughing with the Stars. We've got the Dark and Dirty Show. We've got the Debaters Anniversary. There's going to be shows April 20th to April 26th every night at the Gas Station Arts Center. So if you don't know what to do, you go there. But there's also going to be fantastic shows around town as well. You can go to WPGComFest.com. WinnipegComedyFest.com to get updates on what shows are happening, see the lineups, and pick which ones are your favorites. But you should just come see me or Steve wherever we are. We're very friendly.
I want to ask both of you this. I mean, there's so much news in this world, a lot of it pretty serious right now, as you know. I mean, what role does comedy play in how we deal with that, Dave? I'm going to start with you.
I always equate it to the you have to put your oxygen mask on first approach. And I know that for me, keeping my sense of humor is how I can digest and process difficult things and tough news. I think, just being down in the mouth doesn't solve problems. So for me, it's important that you get out, get some laughs. To remember the world is beautiful. It's the people who are crazy.
And Steve, what about you? What do you think the role comedy plays in people's lives these days?
Well, first of all, those are great answers, Dave. 3 points. Secondly, I do think that the expression "laughter is the best medicine" is true to a large degree.
Oh, I think Steve froze up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's jump in on what he was going to say, do you think? To a large degree, laughter is important.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, go ahead.
You go ahead, Dave. You finish. You know Steve better than me, so you try and finish off what he was trying to say.
Well, he'll probably end in a song, and I don't have that ability. But to circle back, I think he was probably going to echo the same thing I was, to the sense that you have to laugh. You have to keep your sense of humor if you're going to be able to process some of the awfulness that's coming into your life every day.
Mm-hmm. Finally, I want to ask you, Dave, maybe hopefully Steve can join us if he can one more time, but here's your chance to convince people why they should take in the Winnipeg Comedy Festival.
It's not that easy to get people to come to comedians to come to Winnipeg, you wouldn't think, except any comedian who's been to Winnipeg always comes back, loves being there. I find Winnipeg crowds to be some of the best in the country, I think, because it's so miserable outside this time of year that you're just so excited to be indoors, you don't want the show to end. But the Winnipeg crowds are incredible. And this being an anniversary of the festival, some of the talent and the comedians that are going to be here, it's going to be probably the best week of your year. So you don't want to miss it. You have to be a part of it.
Well, I want to thank you, Dave, for joining us on the show today. GSAC is new to me, so thank you so much for adding that to my vocabulary. And thank you for also Steve Patterson for joining us on the show today. Thank you, Dave.
Well, Steve would want to say you're just an incredible host, and that Dave Hempstead is probably his favorite comedian, and it's just a shame he can't be here to tell you how excited he is to be coming back for the anniversary of the Debaters.
Thank you so much, Dave. Have a good day.
Cheers, you too.
Dave Hempstead is hosting the shows at the Gas Station Arts Center, GSAC, for the 25th Winnipeg Comedy Festival. Steve Patterson, as you know, is the host of The Debaters. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival runs from April 20th to the 26th. You can find more details, wpgcomfest.com. And we have a pair of tickets to give away for that Debaters show. Email win@cbc.ca and tell us what you want to hear debated. We'll pick a person at random from everyone who emails us before 9 a.m. 7:52 now. As spring break approaches, more Canadians are asking whether a getaway is worth the risk. From beach resorts in Mexico to war in the Middle East and U.S. actions in the Caribbean, Canadians are facing a sweeping wave of travel advisories and security alerts. In light of that, are Winnipeggers rethinking their spring break vacations? CBC's Jim Agapito went out to find out.
My name is Grant Lyons. Considering what's happening in the world right now with world events, has that made you reconsider your spring break plans?
Sadly, yes. With the conflict between Venezuela and the USA, there has been complications with my school's Cuba trip, our choir trip, and sadly, we won't be getting to go on that anymore. So,
now, how does that make you feel?
I'm pretty disappointed because I was really looking forward to getting the opportunity to get out into the world and kind of gauge what's kind of going on in these countries like Cuba, where the people are kind of, underprivileged, and get to sing and do my thing. But yeah, sadly, that's not a reality anymore.
Now, have you made alternative plans to where you will go now for spring break?
Yeah, our school is going to the East Coast for our choir trip instead, which, it's okay. Obviously, I haven't been there either, so it's going to be a good opportunity to meet new people and see new things, but it's definitely no Cuba,
Sasha Jansen.
Has recent world events made you reconsider your spring travel plans?
Yes, we normally do go to the States for a week-long holiday in February, and we decided not to do that this year, so we have done staycations instead. It's been great so far. I mean, we've only done kind of one staycation, if you will. We've got another one coming up. Kids loved it. We went to the Days Inn in Winkler, where there's a water slide that's like a, 5-star resort for them if you're under 10. And places in Morden to eat were fabulous. Dinosaur Museum was wonderful. And Riding Mountain next. So far, so great.
And you said normally you go to the States, correct?
Yeah, Palm Springs.
Palm Springs, huh?
My husband is a little disappointed. Yeah, but the weather is so good right now that actually we're managing all right. If it was minus 30 consistently, we would be regretting it a bit, probably. It's hard when you can't get your poolside experience in the middle of winter.
Eugene Winnicky. We had plans to go south for the winter, but we've changed them completely. Yep, we're not going anywhere.
Why is that?
Just because of the state of the world right now.
Where were you planning to go?
Considering Mexico. So glad we didn't go there. We didn't have our tickets. We were just considering it. So something this spring, maybe within a couple of weeks. So not going to happen.
Are there any other destinations that you're considering now for, spring?
Home. That's it. Yep. We had a tropical vacation this morning at the Leaf. That'll be our tropical vacation for this year.
The Leaf is actually quite nice this time of year. That is CBC's Jim Agapito asking Winnipeggers about their spring travel plans. And we want to hear from you. How has what's been happening in the world impacted your travel plans? Have you had to change them? Are you staying the course? Maybe you've decided that you're going to stay home instead. Give us a call and let us know on our listener line 204-788-3205, 788-3205. We want to hear from you about your spring travel plans. Coming up now to 7:57, and let's go to Heather Wells now and a look at your CBC local news headlines. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. A Manitoba woman killed in a tourist bus crash Sunday in the Dominican Republic is being remembered as a fearless adventurer. 67-year-old Colleen Fullerton of Lockport died in the crash. Her granddaughter Brittany Fullerton says her grandfather was also hurt. He remains in hospital in the Dominican Republic. The Manitoba legislature is set to reconvene today after a winter break. Healthcare and ongoing deficits are expected to be major topics. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather. Heather Wells there with a look at your CBC local news headlines. Again, we want to hear from you about your spring travel plans. What, if you had any, were you planning to go, but has what's happening in the world right now changed that for you? 204-788-3205, 204-788-3205. Also, it's been fairly quiet commuter-wise here. Haven't really heard much out there, but if you have a traffic tip or something out there that might be affecting your morning commute, give us a call here, 204-788-3093, 204-788-3093. Right now in Winnipeg, it is minus 12, cloudy right now. On our way to a high of minus 9. We're looking at some light snow mixed with drizzle later today. Still, yellow level cold warning for parts of the north. Wind chill could make it feel like minus 45, minus 50. Dangerous out there on exposed skin. That's affecting areas of the north, including Thompson, Lynn Lake, and Churchill. We're going to have more on your forecast coming up here. Now, still ahead on the show, what would you choose? More work-life balance or a promotion into management? According to a survey, Gen Zers are not that interested in climbing the corporate ladder. Coming up here in the next hour, we'll speak with a Winnipeg youth panel about what they think. Stay tuned for that. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, everywhere on the CBC Listen app, and of course streaming on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Stay with us. Coming up next here on CBC Radio World Report.
On cue. I'm Garvey Bailey in for Tom Power. As a teenager, the rapper Mercules almost lost his life in a violent attack. Now he's making history as the first Canadian rapper signed to the iconic Death Row Records. He'll talk about his new album Survivor's Guilt and what it took to get here.
I know you think I'm bad, no, but to be honest with you, I do.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly.
CBC News brings the story to you live.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canada.
This situation has changed very quickly.
World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald.
They are toast, and they know it. Or at least, soon enough, they will know it.
That is U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who just provided a defiant update from the Pentagon on the war in Iran. Hegseth claims the United States has achieved total dominance over the region, now being in full control of Iran's waterways, its airspace, and ultimately its fate.
Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. This was never meant to be a fair fight.
Hegseth,
and it is not a fair fight.
Hegseth says Iran's senior leadership has been decimated, its air force neutralized, and the bulk of the country's navy now sits at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. The defense secretary is warning the U.S. can easily sustain this campaign for as long as necessary, and that even larger waves of attacks are already being prepared. The war in Iran is entering a dangerous new phase as the U.S. and Israel intensify their bombardment of the region's security forces and internal power centers. The tempo of the strikes is so intense that state television has announced the morning ceremony for Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been postponed. Among the chaos, a huge power vacuum exists at the heart of the regime, leaving many to wonder who will take control of a nation under siege. The CBC's Briar Stewart has more from the border in neighboring Turkey.
As Iranian clerics are determining the future of the country's ruling regime, Iran is preparing for a ceremony to honor Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, its longtime supreme leader who was killed in an airstrike on Saturday. The ceremony will last 3 days and will be held at the Grand Masala of Tehran, a very large mosque. Afterwards, there will be a funeral procession honoring him. Throughout the capital, his image is plastered on large billboards. Other posters are anti-American, with one reading, "Down with the USA." It's not clear just what Washington's goal is for its operation in Iran, given the sometimes conflicting messages from officials. But there are now several reports that it's considering arming Kurdish forces to help spark an uprising against the government. At the Kapakoy border crossing between Turkey and Iran, Milad, an Iranian living in Finland, has heard those reports and is wary of just what could come next.
It could be difficult. We do not have any democracy. The economy is awful, and I hope this war could change it.
He spoke to CBC News at the border as he was waiting hours for his 4-year-old daughter and wife, who were visiting family in Iran, to be allowed to cross out. CBC News has been told that computer systems are down again on the Iranian side of the checkpoint, prohibiting citizens from leaving.
And Iranian people can go in Iran, but no one can come out.
Turkish citizens who passed through the border gate said the guards were filling out their paperwork by hand and that hundreds of Iranians were waiting to leave. Briar Stewart, CBC News at the Kapakoy border crossing in Turkey.
Ambulances in Sri Lanka are rushing dozens of Iranian sailors to hospital following a torpedo attack in the Indian Ocean. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed this morning that an American submarine sank an Iranian frigate in international waters. More than 100 people are missing after the warship went down roughly 75 kilometers off the coast of Galle. Sri Lankan Navy units have pulled 32 survivors from the water, but dozens more remain unaccounted for. Drone and missile strikes overnight have hit key targets in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar as Iran expands its retaliation across the Persian Gulf. In Kuwait, an 11-year-old girl was killed today by falling shrapnel as U.S. diplomatic missions and military bases across the region remain in the crosshairs. Megan Williams has more on the latest attacks and the growing fears of a wider regional war.
The
latest explosion to rattle Dubai came early this morning. 4 drones striking near the American consulate in this finance tourist hub perched on the Arabian Gulf. The strike came during a night of fighter jets screeching overhead and the loud booms of missile and drone interceptions. Then later this morning, a second attack against the oil giant Aramco's Ras Tanura refinery and a key crude export terminal. And in Qatar, the U.S. base Al Udeid hit by 2 Iranian missiles, with no casualties. For decades, the Gulf monarchies have hosted American military bases and spent tens of billions of dollars on U.S. weapon systems, hoping the alliance would shield their cities and economies from Iran. They also feared a war with Iran would one day bring missiles and drones to their gleaming cities, a nightmare scenario that's now playing out, with Iran hitting bases, embassies, and energy sites in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, and here in the UAE. At least 7 people across the Gulf have been killed in the attacks. Tourists here are waiting, hoping to get on the few flights that are now leaving, as Gulf governments now confront tough questions. How long their missile interceptors and emergency reserves could last, and whether they risk being pulled deeper into a war they never wanted. Megan Williams, CBC News, Dubai.
National security experts are warning of a growing safety gap in the United States since the start of the war with Iran. While security agencies are on high alert, many have been hollowed out by sweeping White House budget cuts. Katie Nicholson reports.
Key institutions like the CIA and the FBI have both had large-scale layoffs.
Daniel Byman is the director of the terrorism program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in D.C. He's been watching how Trump administration cuts, layoffs, and firings have reshaped the agencies that keep the nation safe, especially now that those same agencies are on high alert for any sign of Iranian terror attacks.
But the administration has reduced U.S. capabilities in this area, so the United States might be more vulnerable than it was a year ago.
Hundreds of FBI personnel have left, and hundreds more were reassigned from counterterrorism, cyber threats, and espionage to the administration's immigration crackdown.
And you can't simply remove those people and then replace them very quickly. That expertise, that network takes a long time to build.
Javed Ali lectures on counterterrorism at the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy. He says reassigning agents creates risk.
And if you're going to take priorities off one issue and refocus them on something else, you're going to have to understand that there may be a higher threat profile, and you aren't going to be able to understand what a threat looks like or track as many individuals as you were before.
The U.S. conflict with Iran also began during a now month-long funding shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security as lawmakers try to force change in its immigration enforcement division. Yesterday, Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem told a Senate committee hundreds in their cybersecurity agency had been furloughed. Iran has long been considered a highly dangerous cyber threat. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Washington.
There are fewer than 100 days before the first kickoff, with Guadalajara preparing to host FIFA World Cup matches, even as Mexico recovers from last month's deadly wave of cartel violence. As Jorge Barrera reports, not everyone is believing the government line.
Perla Montes de Oca says a shadow still lingers in the back of her mind that violence could again strike Guadalajara, the capital of Jalisco, which is one of 3 cities in Mexico hosting World Cup of Soccer matches starting in June. Montes de Oca owns a restaurant stand inside the city's match stadium. She says she trusts that authorities have prepared for every possible scenario. Local business leaders say the danger has passed.
Things happen in every country since we are alive.
Gustavo Stufert is vice president of Jalisco's tourism board. He says it's time to move past the February 22nd violence when armed groups torched vehicles to block roads after Mexican special forces killed top drug lord Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho.
People are going to have fiesta all around. People can be sure that everything will be all right and will be secure.
That's the message Mexico's government is also sending.
Aquí, desde esta tribuna,
we can confirm that Mexico is at peace. Soccer can be enjoyed with calm, says Rosa Isela Rodriguez, Mexico's Secretary of the Interior, at a recent World Cup event in Guadalajara, but the city remains on edge as federal security forces maintain heavily armed patrols. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, Guadalajara, Mexico.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app and streaming live on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Coming up on this hour of Information Radio, the city of Winnipeg has cleared out more encampments under the new enforcement rules. We'll hear an update from Winnipeg's acting manager for community development here on the show. Also, how do you feel about climbing the corporate ladder? Well, according to a report, one generation is not too jazzed about the idea. We're going to hear more coming up. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, on the CBC Listen app and streaming live on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. It is 8:11 right now, and time to check in with Heather Wells and a look at your morning headlines. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's Justice Department is working with Indigenous partners and the security industry to improve training for security guards. Justice Minister Matt Wee won't comment on the Dollarama case where a guard is charged with assault with a weapon. Wee admits the government has more work to do as the demand for private security guards grows among Manitoba businesses. And a Manitoba woman killed in a tourist bus crash Sunday in the Dominican Republic is being remembered as a fearless adventurer. 67-year-old Colleen Fullerton of Lockport died in that crash. Her granddaughter Brittany Fullerton says her grandfather was also hurt and remains in hospital. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells with your CBC local news headlines. Let's turn our attention now to the forecast. Abby Adeyemi keeping an eye on that, and we continue to have that yellow level cold warning for parts of the north, don't we, Abby?
Yes, Marge, it's a tale of two extremes across the province this morning. The south we're dealing with grey skies, light snow, freezing drizzle, while up north we're talking about the deep freeze that's still gripping the northern part of the province. Hence, that yellow extreme cold warning in effect for most of the regions up north, tracking it all the way towards Churchill. We're talking about brutal wind chills in the valleys of -45 to -51 this morning, which means frostbite in minutes and exposed skin. So take it easy. I'm talking about under 5 minutes. So you need to take it easy if you're in any of the regions up there. Winnipeg right now, temperatures hovering around -11, -12. Expect a cloudy day. We'll have a good chance of light snow and or freezing drizzle, and breezing northwest winds gusting all the way to 50 km by the noon period. And we warm up to about -9 later in the day. And that's the similar conditions you're going to be seeing across the southern region. But the problem up north is that wind chill close to -51 this morning.
All right, it is going to be a cold one. Stay safe out there. Let's say good morning to the crew here on the show. Darren Morash is also our YouTube producer, and Sierra Sanders keeping an eye on that commute. It's still quiet once again, Sierra.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet, Marge. Haven't gotten too many or actually no calls on the commuter line today, but Winnipeg Traffic Management Center was reporting pardon me, let me get the words right here. Portage Avenue at Empress Overpass, there was a collision there. The eastbound median and second middle lane were blocked there. So that was Portage Avenue at the Empress Overpass. There was a collision and the eastbound median and second middle lane were blocked there. But just recently at that intersection there, or that area there, the collision has been removed from the roadway, but there is one fire truck remaining in the eastbound curb lane. So you want to keep an eye out for that one fire truck remaining as they help clear up a collision there at the Portage Avenue and Empress Overpass. One fire truck is remaining in the eastbound curb lane. So you want to keep your eye out for that. Still a little time left in the show, so give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
It is 8:14 now. Well, you've heard of the term rat race. If you want success, you have to hustle to climb the corporate ladder. But one generation has mixed feelings about this. A survey from employment agency Robert Half last year found that after surveying 835 Canadian professionals, only about a third of Gen Z workers said they were interested in management roles, with younger employees focusing more on work-life balance compared with previous generations. Jaysa Tote works with Gen Z in the workforce. She is a founder of Lively Consulting. It's a recruitment and career development company based here in Manitoba, and this is what she told CBC.
Say it's something that I definitely have noticed, and I would say it's been going on longer than people realize, especially when we consider the corporate ladder. I feel like that's a term that people have commonly used for advancement when it comes to careers, and careers are actually less linear than people think. When people are recognizing that Gen Z is taking a different approach, it might also be that the recognition that Gen Z lives life differently outside of work too. So perhaps Gen Z is reflecting more, and I honestly feel like that's a positive, because unless people are self-reflective as candidates and sharing that with their employers or potential employers, we can't really find that true alignment and what's going to be important for people going from a long-term perspective. Employers all have individual career offerings and what their organization looks like from a position by position basis or from the organization's culture in general. And each individual is going to have a different set of career values that's going to shift throughout their life. It's something different that perhaps Gen Z is just a little bit more reflective of what they want, and they're putting it out there.
That was Jaysa Tote. She is founder of Lively Consulting. So we wanted to hear from some young people here in Manitoba about what they think about this. Joining us now for the discussion is Angel Pangilinan, Adam Foster, and Aaliyah Kammerman, who are all part of our youth panel this morning. Well, good morning to all of you. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Good morning.
I want to throw out this question first to all of you, and I'm going to go around the table here. Your reaction to the clip there from Jaysa. Jaysa talking about how perhaps Gen Z is more reflective about what they want. I'm going to start off with you, Angel. What do you think?
I think that definitely rings true for me. I feel like both myself and a lot of my friends my age, we're always talking about how we're kind of frustrated with the fact that we kind of have to work within this system where we kind of have to work and grind in order to just survive. And it's frustrating, but we also acknowledge the reality that, it's the way it is. And frankly, that is the way it has been for many generations before us. It's just that I feel like our generation tends to be more reflective. And even the fact that we have such free access to social media and are able to talk about it, that kind of creates even more of an awareness since we're able to talk about it.
Adam, what do you think?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think the issue of young people wanting to work isn't really anything new, because 10 years ago you had folks saying that all millennials don't want to work and they would rather just eat avocado toast, right? So I think it's that there's more of a wider skepticism about it among young people. In my personal experience, I work for the federal government. We're seeing a massive wave of layoffs right now due to the federal budget being proposed. Mm-hmm. So for somebody in my position, I'm 26 years old. Why am I going to dedicate my whole life and put all my eggs into a basket with an unstable bottom? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense. There's more out there.
Aaliyah, what about you?
Yeah, I'm not surprised by these stats coming out. I think Gen Z's metrics of success are just different from previous generations, and where we seek fulfillment doesn't come necessarily from climbing a corporate ladder or our salaries, but being invested in the work we do.
Mm-hmm. The survey found that a third of Gen Z workers said they're not interested in management roles. Aaliyah, how would you feel if a management role was offered to you today?
I would feel a little bit of imposter syndrome since I'm in my final year of college and I don't yet feel prepared or like I've earned it, but it is something that interests me, not because I have a drive to climb the corporate ladder. I don't think management positions should be handed out based on seniority. I think it's based on leadership, and I love leading a group and encouraging and taking those first steps to get a project done. And so I think those natural talents and gifts are what make a manager, not seniority. So I would enjoy that in the future, but I'm probably not ready just yet.
What about you, Adam? Because as you mentioned, you work for the federal government, you're in the workforce right now. What if a management leadership role was offered to you?
You know, I think I would probably be quite skeptical about it. Maybe this is a little too hippy-dippy for 8 a.m, but I just feel like there's other opportunities I would much rather put my time and effort into. I mean, I value experiences. I don't really want to dedicate myself to a management role or a career yet when I have so much time ahead of me.
Mm-hmm. And Angel, what about you?
This might be a hot take, but I think I would take it. I would see it more as a challenge. Like Aaliyah said, it's a matter of being able to show those leadership qualities, being able to teach people. And I feel like I really love being able to pass on my knowledge, my experience. We recently had at my workplace a work placement student from CRECOM, and I was kind of helping manage that work placement student. So I think that was very much like an experience that I enjoyed. And I think it might be a matter of individual preference. I'm the kind of person who is ambitious and wants to have those challenges, but it's not necessarily coming from a place of wanting to find myself at the top of a corporate ladder. I just really enjoy challenging myself like that.
How important is work-life balance to all of you? Adam, I want to start off with you.
So important. So important. And I think that is another reason among young people why there's a greater skepticism regarding climbing corporate ladders and career paths, because I think we're realizing after seeing our parents and grandparents do this that careers are hard and it takes a lot out of you. You know, I saw my dad after his career in media for 4 decades be unceremoniously sacked, and it's hard when you dedicate your whole life to something that's so precarious. I just feel like, you know, I'm young. There's so much that I want to achieve before I dedicate the rest of my life to this thing. You know, these systems are supposed to work for us, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, again, with Gen Z in particular, we came of age during the 2008 financial crash. We saw the pandemic. We have seen the current housing crisis, and, you know, we've seen what's going on in the States. I just feel like people are kind of starting to realize what else is there, because this isn't like, there's got to be something else, right?
Yeah, your lived experience it makes it very different for you compared to past generations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Aaliyah, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Adam. I think work-life balance is hugely important. And I think we've seen previous generations get sucked into their careers and kind of let life pass them by a little bit. And like Adam said, what's to show for it at times. And I personally really value family, and I can see myself, if I pursue something corporate or even maybe management roles, getting taken away from that, getting distracted from what really fulfills me, which would be starting my own family.
Angel, what about you?
Same right across the board. I really value being able to rest and spend time with my friends, my family, and do the things that I enjoy. And especially when I find myself being really tired at the end of a workday, I don't have the energy to be able to do that. So I find myself kind of looking for ways that I'm able to work and sustain myself without feeling burnt out. And I feel like because I work in a creative field and many of my friends do, a lot of us are seeking ways outside of the corporate ladder to support ourselves. So by freelance or starting our own businesses. And it's kind of a trade-off where you get that freedom, but you don't get that stability of working corporate.
So after having this discussion here today in the studio and hearing, of course, the results of this survey, what do you think managers, companies need to keep in mind when working with Gen Z? Angel?
I think it's definitely that work-life balance. A lot of us really value being able to live life outside of work. A common sentiment I've seen amongst a lot of Gen Z, both online and in person, is the phrase, "I don't dream of labor," when asked what your dream job is. And I think that's something that managers really need to account for. What are the parameters that you're setting in place to make sure that people have work-life balance? Are you contacting people outside of work? Are you giving them appropriate breaks or giving them flexibility? Those are things that managers really need to keep in mind, and I feel like sometimes they don't.
What about you, Adam?
I 100% agree with that sentiment. I think that there's been this preconception that anything outside of your career previously isn't as important as your work. And I think Gen Z is really flipping that around and realizing that, there's more things to do. And that work-life balance is just so important. I mean, we're individuals. We're not robots, right?
Mm-hmm. And Aaliyah?
I agree that Gen Z wants flexibility and not to be seen as robots, but I would also strongly stand behind our work ethic too. I work with my class at school is some of the most hardworking people I know, and that's what we're carrying into industry. And so I wouldn't want that to be overshadowed by this desire for flexibility, because we are ready to show up and work, especially if we're interested in what we're doing, and especially if we have bosses who care about us, not just what we're producing, but who we are as humans.
Well, you are all the future, and I really do appreciate all of you being here in studio today for this discussion. It's been a good one indeed. Thank you so much to you all.
Thank you for having us.
Angel Pangolin and Adam Foster and Aaliyah Kammerman are all part of our youth panel this morning, talking about the workforce and Gen Z. It is now 8:25 and you're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. The city of Winnipeg says it has cleared out more encampments after new rules were put in place last November. The city prohibits encampments being set up near schools, daycares, and playgrounds. While the effort slowed during the colder months, the city says it's expecting things to pick up in the spring. Greg McPherson is Winnipeg's acting manager for community development. He provided an update to CBC's Cam McLean and other reporters yesterday.
I think things are going reasonably well. What we had noted today is that during the winter months, the numbers have slowed. That being said, the update for the day was that we've been very busy since November 17th. There are 17 sites now that we've actioned as a city. And an additional 51, or not an additional, but 51 total sites have been cleaned or cleared. So the debris, the garbage on the site has been removed, and to whatever extent possible during the winter months, we've tried to return those sites to their original state.
Okay, and so the difference there, sorry, the 17, these were people still living there. You came in, worked with the people.
That's correct.
They're now cleared off, and the other ones they were left in whatever state and believed to be encampments, and the city took away the garbage.
In some cases, the sites that we had worked with our outreach provider on were vacated, and so then we were able to go in with our crew and remove any debris from the site.
Okay.
And you mentioned it's complicated in terms of giving a number of people who have been moved out of those camps. Can you just explain why is it complicated?
Well, we work within the Your Way Home strategy, and our role in that strategy is to provide outreach and garbage removal, and in cases where necessary, to provide enforcement. The housing component of that is the jurisdiction of the province, and so we can't speak to the success or to the degree to which that's been happening.
Okay. So they're the ones tracking.
That's correct.
All of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So everything you do with encampments is tied into Your Way Home, and that's the only data that represents all of those
on the housing front.
Affected.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
For housing, the province is responsible for doing that work. I think that, to be fair, the recent numbers they've released are exceptional. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion, but within the past year, 186 people have accessed housing out of Your Way Home efforts. So I think that's substantial.
That was Greg McPherson, Winnipeg's acting manager for community development. He provided an update to CBC's Cam McLean and other media yesterday.
Do you agree with me on this? Yes. Wait a minute. Am I talking to myself?
When we debate online, we may as well be talking in an echo chamber. CBC is changing that. Manitoba Talks, a matching software that brings together people with opposing views. Different views, one conversation. Sign up today and challenge your perspective at cbc.ca/MB Talks.
It is 8:28 right now, and just want to mention coming up on Radio Noon's call-in here after 12:30. Of course, Radio Noon runs from 12 to 1 o'clock this afternoon. Bruce Layden will be guest hosting the show. You may have heard that BC is getting rid of the time change. Yeah, we're going to be springing forward this weekend. So for today's call-in, we want to hear from you about what you think. Should we keep the clocks the same? Should we continue with daylight savings? Our guest is a British Columbian who has been fighting for the province to ditch the biannual time change for over a decade. And he'll explain how the province got to this point and why he thinks Manitoba should follow. So give us a call at 12:30 on Radio Noon. You can also text us and share your thoughts on what you think about time change. Should we stay the same, or should we continue daylight savings time? I want to thank the amazing crew and our hardworking folks here in the Current Affairs Department at CBC Manitoba. Our APs, Jerome McElwraith, Sophia Peralta-Baron, CA reporters, Jim Agapito, and our news department, Heather Wells, Joni Nicolo, Megan Ketchison, and Darren Bernhardt. Our studio team, Abby Adiemi, Darren Morash, Sarah Sanders, our show producer, Nellie Gonzalez, our senior producer of audio and current affairs here at CBC Manitoba is Leif Larson. Stay with us. Your CBC Local News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is -12, a little bit cooler than yesterday, with a high today of -9. It's going to be windy as well. A 67-year-old Lockport woman was killed in a tourist bus crash Sunday in the Dominican Republic. Family members say Colleen Fullerton had just arrived there with her husband for a 2-week vacation. WestJet says Sunwing customers were on their way to their hotels from the airport when their bus crashed. Brittany Fullerton says her grandmother was a fearless traveler.
They did a big trip to Scotland because of heritage. They wanted to go see their heritage a little more. They wanted to see the world. They went, I think, on 2 vacations a year for the last little bit. Like, they were big into seeing what was out there.
Fullerton says her grandfather was also hurt in the crash and remains in hospital. She hasn't been able to speak with him, and the family has found it difficult getting information on his condition. Manitoba's Justice Minister says his department is working closely with the Indigenous community and the security guard industry. Matt Wiebe won't comment on the Dollarama case where a security guard is charged with assault with a weapon. Police say the guard used brass knuckles to hit a man attempting to leave with stolen merchandise. First Nations leaders say the victim is Indigenous. Wiebe is looking at more regulations for security guards, but he is focused, he says, on advice from Indigenous leaders.
Listen to those voices to ensure that we're providing the kind of training that addresses the concerns and issues that they're seeing out in community. I think there's lots of work and lots of ability for us to build out that training.
Wiebe says the government will have more to say shortly as the demand for private security guards grows. The Manitoba legislature reconvenes today after its winter break. Healthcare and ongoing deficits are expected to be major topics. The NDP government has said it plans to introduce 19 bills, with Premier Rob Canoe saying they will include motions on staff-patient ratios and ending mandatory overtime for nurses. The government is scheduled to present its annual budget March 24th and has promised to stop running deficits before next year's provincial election. Locals in Thompson are cautiously optimistic about a new deal to take over the city's nickel mine. The deal will see current owner Vale and 3 new partners invest up to $280 million in the mine. The owners say they don't plan to lay off workers and, in fact, hope to double production in 5 years. Jason Friesa is the president of the Thompson Chamber of Commerce.
Some of the things that we've struggled with up here is workforce retention, for example, through all kinds of sectors in Thompson. So I think that potentially stabilizes that going forward and just growing with the mine and whatever plans they have. Every sector, I think, in Thompson can benefit from that for sure.
Vale bought the Thompson mine in 2006. School buses and school lunches. In Brandon, some parents say the system isn't fair. Students who live within 1.6 kilometers of their school do not qualify for transportation. That means they also don't get supervised school lunches unless they pay at a cost of $38 a student a month. Raina Wilkinson is leading the charge for more equitable supervision and more provincial funding.
You could be paying the same taxes and live across the street, and one family would have transportation and lunch supervision covered, and the other has to come up with all of that on their own, which is the first inequity. The second is safety.
Brandon School Division has agreed to consolidate lunch supervision costs for consistency across the city. The Minister of Education's office says it's up to school boards to make budgetary decisions like lunchtime supervision. A new study suggests hungry polar bears in northern Manitoba aren't seeking humans out for food. Researchers at the universities of Manitoba and Saskatchewan found shrinking sea ice is forcing bears to spend more time on land. And as a result, they say bears and humans are interacting more. But they say those interactions involve bears of all body conditions, not just the skinny ones that haven't been able to hunt enough seals on the ice. Alex Crawford is an assistant professor of environment and geography at the U of M.
If a polar bear is desperate and starving and happens upon a human, that is still a more risky interaction than if the polar bear is fat and happy. And they're more likely to either seek your food or seek you out as food if they are desperate.
The study covered 11 years and documented more than 500 visits by bears to field camps near Churchill. You can find more on that story and other news from Manitoba. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you so much for the morning, Heather.
Thank you. Nice to work with you.
Nice to work with you, too. Heather Wells there with your CBC local news update. Let's check in one last time with Sierra Sanders and a look at that morning commute. Hey, Sierra.
Hi, Marjorie. Been pretty quiet on the commuter line this morning, but still hearing emergency crews finishing up removing a crash that we were seeing at Portage Avenue at the Empress Overpass. There was a collision there in the eastbound median and second middle lane, and those were blocked. But now they have removed the collision from the roadway, but one fire truck is still in the eastbound curb lane cleaning up that collision and helping get that situation cleared, though. So keep that in mind if that is on your commute today. Portage Avenue at the Empress Overpass, a collision is being removed from the roadway, and one fire truck is still blocking that eastbound curb lane.
Thank you very much, Sierra.
Thank you.
Let's check in with Abby and one last look at your forecast. Hey, Abby.
Yeah, dangerously cold in the northern parts of the province due to the deep freeze gripping the region. We're talking about extreme cold warnings in place. Life-threatening wind chills close to -51. It is brutal. For the south, we're seeing -10s to -17, and we'll see highs near -9. But for the northern parts, it's more frigid. And long forecast for Winnipeg, we have +4, +5 Saturday, Sunday.
Okay, thank you, Abby. Abby, I'm there with your forecast. Thank you so much for joining us this morning here on Information Radio. I'm Marjorie Dowhouse in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. Stay safe, stay warm out there. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. And of course, don't forget Radio Noon coming up at 12 o'clock. Stay tuned here to CBC Radio 1 coming up next, The Current. Have a good one.